Welcome and thanks for joining us for BoiseDev's live election coverage. Tonight we're going to be joined by special guests, Boise City Council members Patrick Bajan and Lucy Willits, also Meridian City Council member Luke Kavanaugh. We're also going to be joined by Idaho Secretary of State Phil McGrain, KBOI's Nate Shellman, and ACHD Commissioner Alexis Pickering. Next.
You are watching a BoiseDev live presentation, The Growth Vote, presented by Regents Blue Shield of Idaho, featuring our live panel and your questions. Next.
Mark, I've been looking at your labs. They look great. What have you been doing?
The Growth Vote. Here's your host, Gretchen Parsons.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us tonight for BoiseDev's live election coverage. I'm Gretchen Parsons. I'm joined by BoiseDev senior reporter Margaret Carmel and our BoiseDev founder, Don Day.
We had to start early.
We did.
We have stuff to talk about. So
we sure do.
We've got a whole bunch of people. We're going to cycle folks through tonight. We want to welcome our first guests. They showed up early, and so we're going to go with it. We've got Meridian City Council member Luke Kavanaugh and Boise City Council member Patrick Bajan.
Hey, everybody.
And we're going to call you Luke and Patrick, if that's okay.
Totally
the
fine.
honorary titles are hard when you've got a lot going on.
I'll be Luke.
I like it.
All right, Patrick. We'll just confuse everybody all night long.
We also have KBOI's Nate Shellman is here. Hello, Mr. Shellman.
Hi, friends. Hi, everybody.
He's in the studio, otherwise here in downtown, and thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for making me a part of it. Interesting night we're having so far, just at the beginning.
Let's just get to the results. That Garden City race, we'll get to it. Let's start with the Boise mayor. We'll start at the top and just kind of run through this. Gretchen, what do we got here?
Well, so far, early results trickling in. Lauren McLean, she has 64% of the vote right now. Masterson, 34.9. Of course, these are very early right now.
Yeah, and so what we think we're getting from the Ada County clerk is results that are the early voting and absentee.
Got it.
And it looks like the turnout there is about 7,800 absentee and 8,100 early voting. So I was a journalism major, so that's what, about 16,000 votes in so far, which is pretty good. 8 years ago, not the mayoral race 4 years ago, but 8 years ago, there was only like 22,000 turnout in Boise. And so we're already getting near that with having the same day.
Wow.
Let's go through some of these Boise council districts. I'll let you go.
Sure. Colin Nash right now is leading with 48%. Hillary Smith, 27%. Grant Burgoyne, 20%. And then Jesse Gonzalez with 3.5%.
So that's District 2. Over in District 3 in Boise, Kathy Corliss out with an early lead. Josh Johnston in second. Teresa Votter coming in third. And Chris Blanchard in last place there. District 4. Yeah, we'll do some analysis. Let's roll through them, and then we can come back. Go for it.
Yeah, Jordan Morales in the lead, 73%. Then Janet Burke right now, she's got 26.
Over in District 5, we've got Meredith Stead out to a pretty good early lead, 70% to 31% or so. We don't know how same day is going to look. A lot of these results could change. So that's the Boise. Let's look at Eagle.
Stan Ridgway, 33%. He's in the lead. This is close, though, because Brad, he's got 31%. Jason Pierce, 28%.
So this is a race we're going to be watching all night. Let's stop here and talk a little bit about this. And Nate, we'll start with you, just because you are, listening to voters out in Eagle. What do you think of this so far?
It was interesting having a chance to talk to Stan and Jason over the past couple weeks. How their approach was. Stan claims he didn't decide until right before the deadline to run, and his motivation to run was to kind of right a couple wrongs, kind of set the record straight. for the last election, which I found to be quite interesting. Jason Pierce, had to ask him about maintaining the parking lots in Eagle, among other things. But one of the points of concern for Eagle was the growth and how the growth has been managed. You've covered Avamore quite a bit. We've talked about Avamore quite a bit on the program, and a number of people not happy with how that was brought into Eagle. And a number of people felt like, according to Stan Ridgway, felt like they weren't being heard. There was some instances with the senior center that was brought up by Stan. As far as Jason's concerned, he put a lot of it on the city council, and it said, the city council voted 3-1 to include Avamore. The city council voted unanimously to not undo Avamore and to accept it. So it was an interesting covering it moving forward.
Yeah, Margaret, you've been doing a lot of reporting out in Eagle. What do you think voters are talking about, and what do you think? I think some of those same issues that Nate talked about. What do you think people are talking about?
Really, I mean, at first I want to put a finer point on just how close this race is. We have very small difference between number of votes. Less than 100 votes separate Stan from City Council President Brad Pike. And so this could likely shuffle as the night goes on, especially with absentee ballots tending to skew Democratic. Mm-hmm. But as far as issues in Eagle, Mayor Jason Pierce he's very popular with some people, but he has also hit headlines for frustrating people. There was a failed recall attempt against him at the end of last year. People are frustrated about he filed suit against the Eagle Senior Center and ended their lease. Avamore, he sold a park property called West Park. I keep hearing that getting brought up. Some of the park projects that he has been pursuing, a deal to put in a gun range in the foothills. It seems like this long list of things that a certain
Home Depot.
Yes, and Home Depot. Under him, the city filed suit against Home Depot for covering up too many parking spots, with their merchandise. This sounds like a minor thing, but that was a really highly read story on our site, which indicates a lot of interest. And so, to me, I think there's a lot of voters in Eagle who are viewing this election almost as a referendum on him, as far as, do I like how the city is going? Do I like how he's governing? Yes or no? And that's really been the same question that dominates the city council race. Are you with Pierce or not?
So let's keep moving. Let's look at Meridian here, and that Meridian mayor's race, the top of the ticket, so to speak.
That's kind of Simpson, big lead right now, 78%, and then Hahn, 21%.
Incumbent mayor out there, council member Luke. Did you make an endorsement in that race?
I did. It was interesting. I was pretty up front. I didn't endorse Mayor Simpson when he ran 4 years ago, but I think he's done an admirable job of really facing a lot of the challenges that, any new mayor faced between a COVID-19 pandemic, the challenges that I think the whole valley faces with how we're going to manage growth in a predictable and efficient manner. He's done a really, really good job of that. We've opened 2 new fire stations, a police station, expanded our parks. He's done all the things that I think that our community is really looking for from a mayor. I think Hahn ran really very much on an anti-establishment model. He said that he was going to do something different then. I don't think he really articulated what that difference was, and I think the voters are responding.
Do you think, obviously this is super early, so, but as more votes come in, do you see Simpson keeping a pretty big lead, or?
Yeah, Gretchen, I think that's a really good question. I think that, it's one of those things, it's always too early to call, but man, this race I think is solidly over. Mayor Simpson's going to be successful. Hahn may see some day of voting increases, but it's not going to be a margin that's going to make this race competitive at all.
What was the impact, you think, about Mike Hahn's involvement in trying to overturn the Meridian Library?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Mr. Hahn was my opponent 4 years ago for city council.
It was a very close race.
Very close race. Tried his hat at the legislature, was unsuccessful in that. But I think a lot of the voters really got to know who Mike Hahn was because he led this endeavor to close down the Meridian libraries. And I think when, maybe they say no such thing as bad publicity, but boy, when you are associated with trying to close down the library district, that's probably not going to gain you a lot of fans when it comes to your time to run for mayor.
Okay, let's look at these council races in Meridian, and then we're going to swing back to Boise. I think the big one here, probably District 2.
Yep, with Liz Strader, she's leading pretty big, 61%. And then Brad Hoagland, 38%.
And Sydney, actually, why don't you, our Sydney Kid is here. Why don't you join us for a minute? Sydney last week talked to Councilmember Strader, correct? Did you talk to Councilmember Hoagland?
I did, yes.
And so talk a little bit about your story last week and kind of what happened there.
So last week, a mailer was sent out by Hoagland's campaign, and it was very negative towards Liz Strader. But one thing that it had on it was her a picture of her voter registration card, which also included her home address. And Councilmember Strader was very upset that this was included on a mailer that was sent out to thousands of homes that depicted her in a negative light. And she vocalized that to us. When we asked Hoagland about it, he said that it was public record and that it was also on her donation site and in the white pages, so he didn't think anything of it. And he said that he was worried about her previous voter affiliation.
She was a Democrat.
She was a Democrat, and she had since switched to the Republican Party. And he wanted to let people know about that. And he said in my conversation with him, we'll see what the voters think about that on Tuesday. And
Here we are.
Here we are. So I think we're going to find out a little bit about how people felt about that mailer, but also just, the difference in campaigns that these two run.
And a lot of these votes were baked before this happened. This kind of bubbled up on Friday. And so she had a lead before that came out. We'll see if that makes a change in the same day. Luke, you, Libby, Bree in council. These are your two colleagues on the council, two incumbents because of redistricting.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Certainly, it's of all the races today, this is the one that I'm watching the most, and it's bittersweet. We have two remarkable city council members that have done a great job of serving our community that are now, because it's redistricting, are now having to face each other. And both have their own segments of the community they've really worked hard to represent. Brad has lived in Meridian his entire life, was a Meridian High graduate, has served in a variety of different capacities. Liz also, though, has grown up in our community. She's also what we call a boomeringer. She left and has come back and has worked really, really hard to also be active and involved in her segment of Meridian. So I got to be honest, these early margins are a little bit of a surprise to me. I expected to be much closer this early on.
We'll see how that vote goes. Let's look at the other districts. Sydney. So Sydney and Autumn Robertson are going to head out into the wilds of Boise and Meridian. We're going to go chat with the Masterson campaign, and we're going to go chat with the McLean campaign, and there's also some other city council members there. And then we're going to go over and chat with Mayor Simpson. So we'll see her back here in a little while in Autumn as well. So Sydney, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Your reporting there. We'll look at these others really quick. District 3.
We have Doug Taylor with 72% and Bill Chandler, 27%. Doug Taylor, he was the one who helped a lot with Raul Labrador when he was in Congress.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this was an open seat, right? We had two incumbents
Right.
in 2, an open seat in 3, and then over in District 5, a former council member.
Right, Ann Little Roberts, she's leading 68%, and then Todd Ebeling, he has 31%.
Nate, are your listeners talking about these races at all? You have a vibe on what people are saying out there?
Not so much for
Meridian.
not so much for the Meridian City Council races. They were mostly focused on the mayoral race, and just talking with Doug and talking with Ann Little Roberts over the years. I'm not shocked to see Doug Taylor performing well early. Of course, we always have to say that it's early. And Ann Little Roberts just seemed like that she was going to be poised to come back into Meridian politics at some point.
And Nate, it's important to ask you, what do you think of Homer Simpson?
I'm sorry.
What do you think of Homer Simpson?
The story.
Election
the
day,
story
Nate,
that-
I'm talking about Homer Simpson strangling people.
Well, we have I have a loose policy on the show that on election day we don't talk about the current races, we don't talk about the current the current issues, because we don't want to, we just want to encourage people to vote, not how to vote. So in talking about that, and somehow we got on to Homer Simpson not strangling Bart anymore, because it's a kinder, safer world. So we also talked about an Oregon inmate getting away on a golf cart, just to show that inmates escaping Idaho jails isn't just a problem, close to home here.
Okay, let's talk about Boise. So we got to fill 2 hours, so we got to spice it up. Boise mayor's race. And let me do a refresh and make sure this is current. This is, we don't have any same day yet. What do we got here? You want to read this again?
Yeah, McLean right now still a big lead with 64% and Masterson 34% right now.
So, Council President Pro Tem. So, Patrick, it's weird for me to call you all by your first name, so it's going to take some getting used to.
That's okay. Well, soon it'll be weird for you to call me by a formal name.
Yeah, you're right.
As my term ends, so it's practice now.
So that's what I was saying. So your term is done. You decided not to run again. We'll talk about the reasons for that later. But what do you think of the mayoral results early as they are right now?
Well, I'm always so confused by these things. I look at numbers, I see ratios, I try to make predictions, and then I'm wrong. So, look, my perception of Mayor McLean is that she's oft criticized, but she's not terribly unpopular with the majority of the electorate. She's not necessarily terribly popular with the majority of the electorate, but she's a solid mayor who people generally like. And that, I think, if you're running against her, that's what you're up against. The things that she cares about tend to be the things that voters in Boise care about: housing, cost of living, this kind of lurking sense that the city is going to change away from the Boise we like and into something that's less personal in some way. And these are all things that she makes themes of her campaign and hits on and works on. So my perception is that she's a difficult mayor to beat.
Yeah, the former mayor 4 years ago, Dave Peter, kind of ran on this sort of Boise kind platform. You don't hear Mayor McLean use that messaging, but I think that's still sort of embedded in the electorate a little bit, right? Like, people want a nice kind of homespun, hometown feel. I think the same thing is prevalent in Meridian. The electorate's a little different there, but people want to feel like they know their neighbor. Do you feel like that's come across in this campaign?
From both of the prominent candidates, I think that's very much. It's not just how Mike Masterson presents himself. That's how the man is. Yeah. He is the guy next door. He cares very much about this city, just like Lauren McLean does. And I think they're both. You want to say they're both right as a matter of political tactics to be pitching to that, but the truth is they're both just actually that way. These numbers are right now, that ratio is pretty stark. I wouldn't be surprised, I suppose, if it closed, but my intuition is like I said earlier, she's a difficult mayor to beat.
Nate, your audience obviously probably goes a little bit more to the right, but I would say, I heard you once say, how do you describe it? The KBOI audience is kind of a libertarian type of a crew. I would guess you mostly hear from Masterson voters, but what's your sense of people who are following this race closely that are listening to KBOI?
They were hopeful that Masterson would show better. They were hopeful that the vote would turn out for Masterson because, again, Masterson is who he is. He's very even-keeled. He's very down the middle. So as far as the audience goes, which does skew conservative, they didn't take to a lot of the social politics that Lauren McLean partaked in. That there was much debate about the homeless shelter, the Interfaith Sanctuary, just among other things. So I think there was also a hope, a desire from the audience that there would be more of a presence from Mike Masterson over the past, definitely over the past month, over the past couple weeks. And we'll see how it works tonight.
Yeah, it's interesting. This map's a little tricky, but those precincts that are around Interfaith right now, again, early and absentee, the current mayor is way out in front. We'll see if that closes in same day. I thought we might see some activation on Interfaith. We didn't have a candidate in those neighborhoods run, and I thought for sure there would be one. Jimmy Halliburton's district, right? And he's unopposed.
Yep.
Margaret, I'm going to ask you to get up if you can. We have a guest. Our Morgan McDonough was going to be here to help us with the doors. She's not feeling well. So, this ain't I was going to say the name of a specific television station, but I won't. We're going to have fun. We're going to have fun tonight. I'm sure anybody watching who knows me knows which television station I was going to say, but I didn't. So some credit, please. So let's look at, I'm having a little trouble with my cursor here. If I can get that to work. Let's look at some of these council district question. I'll let you read through these.
Yeah, Colin Nash still has the lead right now, 48%. Hillary Smith second with 27, then Grant Burgoyne, he's got 20%.
So this is a district that we thought might be close. It still could be. Grant Burgoyne, a state legislator, Colin Nash, a state legislator, both of whom I believe Colin Nash worked for Grant in his office, something like that.
Could be. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not as up to speed on the
It's
legislature
Margaret would
stuff.
know, so-
That's right.
But I mean, an interesting race. You've served alongside Colin for a little bit here. What are your early impressions?
Again, with the early numbers and how I'm always wrong, I thought it would be. I thought the early numbers would be closer between Grant and Colin. That was my perception. But like I said, I'm always wrong. Colin is great. I haven't met or worked with Grant, and I don't live in that district, so I'm not the subject of the targeted mailings and the targeted campaign literature that other people get. The one thing that comes across in a maybe a shallow way as you look at that campaign from farther away, or that race from farther away, is you get a real sense of a generational difference between those candidates. Colin is young and energetic. Grant is more experienced and has been around longer, and that comes through in a lot of the messaging that at least the debates have seen.
And Margaret, while you were actually, Councilmember Willits, if you want to just come and join us, we've got an extra seat here. We'll just add you on to the end here. Colin worked with Grant. Am I remember that correctly?
I believe they were colleagues
Wasn't that in your
in
profile?
that district at the same time. Yes,
Yeah.
at the legislature.
Yeah, so kind of an interesting dynamic there. Let's look at Council District 3. This is, when I've been texting with my sources, and I think Margaret's been texting with her sources. This is the one everybody's like, what is going to happen?
Yeah.
Councilmember Willett, since you're the new addition to the panel, if you can see those results there.
I cannot.
Again. Okay, well, yeah. So
I should have brought my
we'll let
glasses.
Gretchen read them, and then we
Thank
can
you.
go talk about that.
Yeah, Kathy right now, she has the most with 39%.
Okay.
Josh Johnson, 26%. Vaughter, 19%. And then Chris Blanchard, he has 14%.
Okay, how many
Of course, very early.
precincts?
So
How many
this is
precincts?
all early and absentee. We don't have
Okay.
any day of vote.
Yeah.
This district borders your district. Do I have that?
Yeah,
correct?
both 2 and 3 have pieces of my old district, or my current district,
Oh,
I should
interesting.
say. Yeah.
So some of your voters are in this district.
Yes.
Everybody's kind of been talking about, boy, this is going to be the one tonight.
Yeah.
Very early. What do you think so far?
Well, a couple of things that I think to note about this district, because there's so much attention that goes to the mayor's race, but the fact is this is a 4-year council seat. So it's got longevity, and it's a 4-way race. Here's a couple of things to know about early voting. And I will tell you this from my race the last time, is that this doesn't surprise me, because typically Democrats and independents tend to vote absentee. And so when I ran 2 years ago, I was down by 20 points with the absentee vote,
That's right.
and I
That's
had
right.
knocked every one of those doors.
That's right.
Okay. And then early voting, I was down by 10, and then it was a landslide day of voting.
Mm.
So those numbers are going to change.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think in this race, Margaret, you've talked to all these candidates, you profiled them all. 3 of them identify as Republicans, I would say. And one of them identifies as Democrat. I'm going to get up and do this. How about this? You answer my question, and I'll go get the door.
Well,
got it.
first, before I talk about this, I really want to note the low turnout so far.
Okay.
I mean, this is our candidate that has the most is 776 votes, and that is several hundred less than we saw the lead candidate have in District 2. So, I mean, this is a low turnout race. I think that's what we all expected with 4 candidates who've never run before with no name ID, and in an area of the city that historically does not vote very much in municipal elections. So even when we talk about percent, you still got to look at those numbers of, well, how many votes separate 39% and 26? I think that Lucy's right, that it doesn't surprise me that we're having a left lean coming out. Something to keep in mind, though, is that Kathy Corliss and Teresa Vaughter, they are very similar candidates.
Yeah.
They're both women. They both, even though Teresa never endorsed Mayor McLean, she backs her entire platform for the most part. And so does Kathy. They both have a lot of the same voters, and that's likely going to split the vote. So it wouldn't, if you combine those two similar candidates together, yeah, they're leaning left, but it wouldn't surprise me if Josh Johnson comes ahead and wins this race, because we have two similar candidates who are splitting that vote apart. And that could, at the end of the day, be a regret from one of these candidates, that they both stayed in the race. Kathy Corliss got in the race late, knowing that Teresa Vaughter was already there. And so I think that could be one of those things that gets talked about years later of, oh man, two similar candidates stayed in, and that's going to have a 4-year-long impact on the council, which, we'll see what ends up happening. But that is a result that I would not count out.
Yeah, let's look at 4, Gretchen.
Yeah, Jordan Morales, clear lead, 73% right now to Burke's 26.
So it's interesting. I've never had a door knock before. I used to live like way out Warm Springs, like almost to 21, and nobody's ever knocked my door. And
I avoided your door. I'm dead serious.
That's
I saw who it was.
That's not
no.
a coincidence.
Yeah, so it's funny because I got knocked by Jordan Morales himself, and of course, so we have a newborn. And I saw the camera. I was like, I'm not answering that like that. And then I looked at it and I was like, I think that's Jordan Morales. So I go out into the driveway. I'm like, had a nice chat with him. And then I also had my Masterson volunteer, but I didn't see it until way later. And I was very disappointed because I wanted to chat with them. But it was nice to get some door knocks. You guys have done the door knocks, all 3 of you. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that a little bit. What do you get when you're out on those doors and people pop up, and are people generally nice? Are they nasty? What is it like?
We get a little bit of everything, but people are generally, they're relieved you're not selling windows.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Solar panels.
Solar panels.
Yeah.
They're pleased that you actually, want to engage them. And generally, I've had almost nothing but positive experiences knocking doors. People are great.
Well, Don, I have some really funny stories about that would probably take a little bit too much time, but somebody mistook me for hospice. Like, they said, we've been waiting for you. And I said, like, yeah, they said, come on in. And I said, people don't usually say that. And they said, no, we know you're coming. And then I walked in and I said, are you sure? And then they're like, wait, who are you? And the guy was really sweet. He's like, if my mom could vote, we would have her do it. But I said, well, she did request an absentee.
Oh goodness. Don't fill it out and send it in now.
No.
I'm just teasing. But I think to Patrick's point, people are generally nice, although there are some grumpies. I do think, particularly in West Boise, they expect you to knock on their door.
Yeah.
Like, because of the dynamics of that district, if you don't knock on their door, you don't want their vote. And that is an indication of the competitiveness of the legislative race.
Let's welcome in ACHD Commission President Alexis Pickering. Thank you for joining us.
So happy
We're going to
be here.
rotate people through. Margaret will come back because she knows everything. But she's texting. See her, she's texting sources, which is great. Or maybe she's just texting her friend. We'll pretend she's texting sources. We're talking about door knocking here, and thanks for joining us. Luke, you had something to add.
Well, yeah, I think like Boise, I think Meridian residents expect that you're going to knock your door. And I think it's like everybody's got their own strategy when it comes to campaigning. But I think you see time and time again when you talk to candidates who are successful on election night, there's a reoccurring theme. They knock doors. They talk to the voters. And I'll tell you, my very first time I was running, it's hard, right, to go and ask somebody, hey, will you vote for me? And I was having a rough day, and it was an absentee ballot receiver. And she invited me in and poured me a cup of coffee while she voted for me. And I'll tell you, if there's not a more humbling, overwhelming, like empowering moment, it was this little old woman who was like, I've heard about you and I want to vote for you. And so I think it's a part of that formula is if you're not knocking doors, you're not going to take the job serious and you don't care about the needs of the voters.
And people probably appreciate that you took the time to actually knock on their door and show up. I'm sure that makes a big difference.
100%. When I ran last time, I had a guy tell me for the second time that nobody's ever knocked his door. And I had to remind him, I was here at your door 4 years ago. We talked about this issue. And he was like, oh, that's right. I remember. So I think there is that belief, too, that people don't come and they aren't going to engage. When you do, it makes a big impact.
You ran for ACHD 2 years ago.
Three.
I
know.
That's right.
Time
Three.
flies. Time flies.
And so you're up again soon.
Next year.
Yeah. So tell us, we're just kind of chatting about the door knocking as we're waiting for more
Yeah,
results.
I mean, I was the first ACHD candidate that ever had knocked doors in the way that I did. And I think, previous candidates, maybe like Commissioner Hansen, he might have done some door knocking, but nobody had done door knocking. And so when I approached the doors, they were like, what is ACHD and who are you, right? Which was a really great way to meet people and hear their concerns. Because especially with these nonpartisan, super down ballot races, they just don't expect candidates to make the time, right? And so it made that much more of an impact, I think. And obviously it made the difference with my 4 votes. So I think that was
you two in your tight races.
I know.
Was yours 4 as well?
No, I beat him.
Yeah.
I'm happy to have that.
But Alexis talked about something I think that you hit on, which is that you did knock doors really well. And I think all of us as electeds will get phone calls from people. Hey, tell me about so and so. And I had a significant amount of phone calls from people who also said, what's this ACHD thing and who's this Alexis that knocked my door? And so it just goes to show that no matter how big the valley gets, engaging on a grassroots basis is really important to the voters, and any candidate is going to take the race serious.
So we got some new results. I'm sure you want to add to the door knocking, but we'll come back to this as we go along. So we've got 5 of 106 precincts. Let's quickly just go through them all. We'll just rotate. How about that?
Yeah, sure. McLean right now, she's got 61% to Masterson's 37%.
Just a slight narrowing there. In District 2, Colin Nash still on top with 48% of the vote. Hillary Smith in second place with 28%.
District 3, Kathy Corliss, 36 in the lead. Josh Johnson, 31, and Botter at 17.
In District 4, we've got Jordan Morales out to a strong lead there with 74% of the votes.
And then Meredith, she's got 69% to Gugino's 30.
How do you say his last name? I meant to look this up today.
Gugino.
Gugino?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Gugino.
Okay. Somebody knows. It's good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis and Nate. And Nate Shulman
wow.
from KBOI still joining
You
us
guys
here.
both in agreement. That's
It's
awesome.
good. Hey,
You might be
know what?
surprised.
Kumbaya.
A real unifier.
Eagle Mayor, this is the one I think we're going to be talking about all night. Stan Ridgway out in front, but not by a lot. 33%. Brad Pike, 31%. Incumbent Mayor Jason Mears right now in third place with 28%. This race and the Boise Mayor's race, does the Meridian Mayor have a runoff?
No runoff
So
in Meridian. So
Boise and Eagle Mayor's races have runoffs. The Boise Council races used to, they got rid of it. And I remember doing a story on it, and Peter's like, we're going to do the mayor's race later. They never did it. And then he was in a runoff. And so here we are. So the Eagle Mayor's race, I bet we'll be covering this for another 4 weeks, Margaret Carmel. Eagle City Council, this is a vote for 2 situation.
Yeah, let's see. Christopher Haddon right now, 25% in the lead. Christina Patterson, 23%.
And this is interesting because Mary May, who was on the ACHD commission and lost her seat, ran for council out there, and right now wouldn't make the cut for that vote for 2. Garden City City Council, Gretchen, you did the profiles on this.
I'm curious about this one. James Page right now, he's the incumbent, 36% to Kent, 33, and Hannah Ball's got 30. So
And that's another top 2. So 2 of these folks will make the council,
Right.
and 1 will not. In CUNA, City Kid worked on this. Help me watch for them to come up here. If you see Sydney or Autumn pop up.
Oh, got it. Okay.
CUNA Mayor, so Joe Steer, the incumbent there in the lead. Over into Meridian, Mayor Simison with a really commanding lead at 78% of the vote. Sorry, we're alternating.
No, sure. District 2, Liz Strader right now, she's on top, 61% to Hoagland's 38.
These are both incumbents. There was some drama last week, which we talked about a little earlier.
Interesting.
We'll come back. This is still in Meridian, just absentee and early. We have some same day in Boise, but not in Meridian, so these results haven't changed. In District 3, Doug Taylor, strong lead against Bill Chandler.
Then District 5 in Meridian, and Little Robert, 68% strong lead as well.
Over in Star, we have Mayor Chadwick. He is out to a pretty strong lead there. We're going to skip the school for right now, but let's put that jail bond.
Yeah,
Wow.
quite a bit in favor, 69%.
Yeah.
I'm not sure on that one. Well, it's still early, but I am curious to see.
It is. This is a 2/3 majority. What I'm interested at is every single precinct right now is the dark blue color. And so the county may get this and get their new jail. Since we're here, we're at the end of the list. Let's talk a little bit about that. What do we think about the jail bond?
I'm not surprised.
Really?
And I'll tell you, I think because of the dynamics of the Ada County Commission, this did not become partisan, and you had Republicans that voted for it because they trusted that it was fiscally responsible. I think if the dynamics would have been different, I think we would have seen more of a debate on this. And in general, Ada County will vote to support things that Canyon County will not.
Yeah,
And
CWI,
Mhm.
for instance. Yeah.
So I'm not surprised by this. I was skeptical that they could do it, and they still may not
Long
be
way,
able,
yeah.
because of the short time frame.
Yeah.
But I think they were really smart to do it when there were mayoral elections, around the valley. And I hope it passes.
Do you get this kind of like thing where what you talked about with the All Republican Commission overlaid with the fact that it's a municipal year and you get a little bit more progressive of an electorate? Trump's not on the ballot, for instance. So you have kind of this funny little thing where people trust the commission, and if they're Republican leaning, and they're a little progressive, and they might be like, yeah, let's spend some money. Do you think that's kind of a combo?
I think in general, folks that vote in municipal elections tend to be more in tune with policy. They aren't just presidential voters. They understand that local elections really make a difference in their neighborhood. And I think in general, in Ada County, people will invest in things that they know are important.
Alexis, you made a face at me, which means you didn't agree, which I like.
I can't remember which part was it, but
Sort of the progressive overlay in the electorate.
well, I'm just wondering if that was necessarily intentional because, this was brought up 6 years ago with Commissioner Lanciando. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about the overcapacity of our jail system in our coroner's office. Like, it's a massive issue and it's been a big problem for quite some time. I would be surprised if it passes. I'm in favor of it. I would be surprised if it passes because there really hasn't been a lot of information about it, like talking about what it is that we're paying for, all of those specifics. So I feel like voters really do have a right to say no because they don't know what they're voting for.
To that point, our Sydney kid called the county spokesperson in August because we caught wind of this, and the spokesperson said, whoa, we haven't even talked about the B word yet. It's November. It hasn't been that long.
Yeah.
And I don't know if maybe the spokesperson wasn't read in, but it seemed to happen pretty quick and often.
It did happen fast.
Okay, let's go back up and talk about some Boise a little bit at the top of the ticket. So this is just 5 of the 106 same day in Boise. We have 2,000 election day votes, 7,800 absentee, and 8,100 early voting. And the current mayor is strong lead, 62%. That would avoid a runoff if it holds. It's interesting, though, 4 years ago, she had all of the precincts. She won all but one, I believe. I think Rebecca won.
It was for Rebecca Arnold.
Yeah.
In my district. Yeah, District 1.
And she's got some districts where Masterson's in the lead. We'll just throw this open to the panel. Councilmember Bajan, you haven't spoken in a while, so what do you think? I know I've asked you about this again, but we got a lot of time to fill.
About Rebecca Arnold's district? Or
Yes.
about
Tell me what you think about that.
No, this is similar to, I think, what we talked about earlier, maybe when people weren't here. I think Lauren McLean, for better or worse, depending on your perspective on local politics, is a very, very difficult mayor to beat. She's not broadly unpopular. There are many people who are upset with her. There are many people who adore her. But my personal perspective is that they're both relatively small constituencies. She's doing what most people want on housing. She's doing what most people want on affordability. The juggernaut in all of the Boise races that we haven't talked about yet is the modern zoning code. Every candidate has tried to talk about themselves on that. And she's obviously very, very tied to that. And so I guess my thinking was if there was going to be a close race or a neck and neck race between former Chief Masterson and Mayor McLean, it would tell me something about what the public thinks about that zoning code. And these really early results tend to indicate that the public is supportive of it.
Lucy, so I had heard that you were at a fundraiser with Mike Masterson or for Mike Masterson. What are your thoughts tonight? It's still early.
Yeah, so I didn't publicly endorse. I did go to an event where there were candidates. I think, to Patrick's point, I think Laura McLean is a hard person to beat. She outraised him 4-1. There was a lot of outside money, and BoiseDev did a great job.
On both sides, yeah.
But more so with Laura
I agree.
McLean. I mean, when you get a $50,000 PAC donation from DC, and it was extremely well funded. She'd been raising money for a long time. And at the end of the day, the dynamics in Boise are pretty hard to crack. So it'll be interesting to see how these numbers change. But I do think that she's a very strong candidate, and you would have to raise a lot of money to be able to knock her off right away.
Alexis, did you knock some doors this cycle for some of the candidates?
I did.
And which candidates? If you're
Yeah, I was
share?
knocking for Lauren and Colin Nash. He's representing my district for city council, and Colin's been a huge advocate of mine and part of like my origin story and landing in politics. But when I talked to folks on the doors, it was really similar to what Patrick was saying. They were very much cognizant of the zoning code rewrite. They're really happy about the investments that are going into affordable housing. And I think they were also really turned off by the attack ads, the fear-based, fear-mongering type approaches from Masterson or his PAC, and just the lack of a plan. He's really just been criticizing. And I think a lot of the electorate is just like, we don't really like that. That tells us a lot about who you might be as a mayor. And they might have some pieces and parts that they disagree with the mayor on, but generally speaking, they're really pleased with where Boise is going in terms of the investments and the priorities the mayor's been having.
Okay, we're going to take our first break here because we've got to pay for all of these fun things. Councilmember Willits, Councilmember Bajent, Councilmember Kavanagh, and not Councilmember Pickering. We'll have some of you back. We're going to keep rotating through as we go on, and we'll be back here in just a minute.
Hi, I'm Hank Patterson, here on behalf of Lithia Ford of Boise. Right now is Lithia's all-wheel drive event, because no matter where you drive, the freeway or the backcountry, no matter the conditions, snow, sleet, rain, mud, wet, dirt, you're going to want to drive on all your wheels, not just some of them. Tell you what, I drove to Laramie one time on 3 wheels, sparks flying everywhere, dog barking. God, boy, I could have used all my wheels on that trip.
Mark, I've been looking at your labs. They look great. What have you been doing?
When you're the leader in disaster cleanup and restoration, how do you make like it never even happened happen?
Fire it up, Randy!
By being prepared for anything! Whatever comes your way, there's a pro for that.
Serve Pro, like it never even happened.
Welcome back. Thanks so much for joining us for BoiseDev's live coverage of election night with Gretchen Parsons, Don Day, Alexis Pickering, Luke Kavanagh, who's down there? We've got Margaret and we've got Lucy Willits.
And Nate Shellman, remote.
And Nate Shellman, sorry, Nate.
That's okay. I'm still here.
He's still there. He's always there. He's the only one that couldn't join us in person, so he's easy to forget about.
I will fix that now. For those of you who thought that this jail bond was going to pass, I'd love to ask. I have a whole lot of questions because so far throughout the night, all I've seen is the numbers go down, and right now the numbers did refresh just a little bit. Looks like it's 69% dead even, which means it only has to lose basically 2.3 more percent for it to not pass. I would love to know why there wasn't more of an effort from Ada County, from the Ada County sheriffs to get the message out, because I think a lot of people voting didn't have much to go on. I would venture to guess that a lot of people voting didn't know that there was an Ada County jail bond on the ballot until they stepped in and saw it on the piece of paper, if they happened to turn it over. And then they see this this message saying, all right, well, we're going to charge you an extra $13. I don't know why there wasn't more of a sales job on this. And the people I have this question to aren't sitting at the table.
Yeah, and I got a couple of text messages. I got a pretty good sized mailer. Yeah, I mean, it's always, you wonder what the targeting is, and like mailer might have gone to my wife. I don't even remember. Like, just showed up.
But wasn't there legislation though that limited how
Correct.
Governments can explain? It was mostly targeted to school bonds, right?
Correct.
And it applied to the county government. And I think that's like this is a negative impact of some of that legislation that passed at the state house.
Well, I think that's also appropriate, right? You don't want your tax dollars being used to lobby you to spend more tax dollars, but is that kind of thin line about how you can educate and inform without maybe advocating for a particular issue? And I think that's always going to be hard for governing agencies to require on taxpayer funding to be successful for these large capital infrastructure projects.
I think I'm going to offer maybe an alternative viewpoint here. I think that voters often love to say that there wasn't enough of an effort or there wasn't enough information, when really what it is a case of people pay attention to what they want to pay attention to. They're paying attention to the mayor's race. They're paying attention maybe to city council, but the jail bond is just not, on their radar. I see this time and time again where people in multiple issues where people say, well, why didn't anyone tell me? Why didn't anyone tell me? I'm not going to knock on your door and tell you to go read BoiseDev.com or to go read the Idaho Statesman. We've been reporting on this as we did multiple stories. They have been doing news stories about the overcrowding in the jail since I got here 5 years ago. Again, like Dawn said, texts, mailers. The sheriff was doing presentations.
Survey.
I honestly, I'm looking at this and I'm going, I don't know what more they could have done within the bounds of the law. People just we're not dialed in on this issue.
But do you think, kind of to Dawn's earlier point, they started being vocal about this very late in the game?
They did. Definitely. Oh, for sure. Definitely late in the game. But in terms of just the visibility of this topic in the news media and with the campaign that they did, I think they could have started earlier, and that's a real thing. But would that really have made it cut through the noise and made much of an impact? Most voters don't start paying attention to the election until October anyway.
You should see our analytics today and how many people were Googling so-and-so named Republican, so-and-so named Democrat, and like our web traffic was crazy because we were like, oh, I got to go vote. One, what district am I in if they're in Boise and Meridian? Two, what's on my ballot?
Which, to be fair, is new.
Yeah.
It is,
yes.
But even still, they're like, well, gosh, I got to vote for, Luke or Alexis. What do they think? And they don't even know until the day of the election. Like literally, I could show you the analytics. It's crazy. It happens every year.
Sure.
Yep. And so you get people who are just like, I got to vote. I want to vote. It's important, but I don't know what to vote for. And so when you're talking about a jail bond, it's complicated. It's not just a simple thing of like, yeah, we need more jail cells. Or I don't know. Like,
I do think they were late.
Conservative or not, and
I think they were late. And I think if you compare that to the city's efforts on water renewal and all of the things that happened 2 years ago, I do think it's a different game with the county, but also like where are the special interests that come in and help educate voters, because that plays an effort in this as well. And I don't think there's the same constituency on this issue as there is on environmental issues.
The other thing is that we have people voting no on this from both parties that I've seen. More progressive people don't like to put people in jail. Yeah. They're morally opposed to that, and they view this through the lens of, I don't want my tax dollars to incarcerate more people. I think that we should have people on petty theft and people who can't pay lower amounts of bail be out. That's their philosophical view on this. And then we have conservatives who say, you want to raise my taxes? Heck no. And those two groups are sort of coming together.
So let's do this. We've got a little more result. Luke, I'm going to ask you to step out.
Yep.
And we'll bring Secretary McGrain, who is here, in. Let's do a roll through Boise and Meridian results, and we'll talk to Bill.
Is this the latest?
This is the latest. So we've got 18.
Phil has his classes and I don't, so I'm moving.
I love it. Hey, you know what? We are rolling with it. So we've got 18 of 106%.
There we go.
a lot of words.
How does this work?
I have a
Come
newborn.
in,
I
sit
just like
down, and
to
start
remind
talking.
everybody I don't sleep these days. So we'll start with the voice mayor. We'll let you read. How about
Sure,
that?
yeah. McLean right now is still a strong lead, 59% to Masterson's 39 right
That
now.
is narrowing a little bit with
Yeah,
the same
sure.
day. So also, I will tell you, Sydney and Autumn, I just talked to Autumn. We'll be hearing from Mike Masterson in probably 7 or 8 minutes.
Okay,
So we'll go
great.
out to him live and hear what he thinks. District 2, Colin Nash still out with a pretty sizable lead. Just 3 of the 15 precincts there. So, we've got a little ways to go. District 3.
Yeah, and that one could be really interesting.
Yeah, let's go ahead and stop there and pause for a second.
Well, and I think something that we haven't brought up is how late Hillary Smith started.
Yeah.
I mean, she basically, declared and started campaigning, whereas I think Colin and Grant had been campaigning for some time. So it's really going to be interesting to see the dynamics here just based on that alone and how much time has been spent.
Over in District 3, Josh Johnson has now jumped to the top of
Yeah.
the heap there.
Barely 34.6, and Kathy Corliss, she's got 34.1, so very close.
4 of 16, so about a quarter of the precincts in there. District
And once again, look at the dynamic there. Teresa and Kathy, very similar candidates. You add those two together, they have quite a commanding lead. But when they're both in the race, they're splitting, and Josh Johnson is ahead.
Yep.
And John, something to add with Margaret is you think about Kathy got Planned Parenthood's endorsement and Teresa got the statesman's endorsement.
Interesting.
So again, they split on major endorsements as well.
Yeah.
Yep. Great point.
Over in 4.
Yeah, let's see. Jordan Morales with 70% right now. Pretty big.
Not shocking.
Yeah, not shocking.
Yeah,
that one you can call right now.
Yeah, District 5, Meredith Stead with a pretty commanding lead over Jeremy. We've got Secretary McGrain here. He's the
I feel like an amateur here.
He's the senior elected on the dais, I guess, kind of.
On the panel.
On the panel. I don't like when we put dais and stories in here. I just said it out loud.
I've got a shortcoming in this group.
Secretary, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here.
You obviously have kind of a statewide view.
Yeah, I was going to say, just listening, I feel like I'm panned way out looking at the election. I have not drilled into any of the city council races as I've been looking at results.
I ran into you on the street right after you had voted last week.
That's true.
And you said, it's always interesting. We had a fire and we had to shuffle precincts around. There was a precinct shuffle today in Boise with a flood.
Yep.
It's like a Surf Pro ad. We got fire, flood. There's going to be a mold problem next time. What are you seeing around the state, and what have you been watching today as you've been kind of...
Thankfully, it's been a really smooth election day across the state. As you noted, there have been a few issues. Ada County had the water main break at Parks and Recreation yesterday, and so they were actually moving yesterday to get the new location, but thankfully East Junior High was open and available right across the street. We did have internet outage at, I think it was 8 counties today. They're all rural counties that had an internet outage, but it was short-lived and not at a time that it didn't impact anything. We were concerned about tonight being able to get results out to the public, but it was up and running. Again, it was about 15 to 30-minute outage. Otherwise, just little things here or there. Some of the same, calls. I think, Margaret, you were one of many people talking about electioneering today. Interestingly enough, I got a call from the Attorney General first thing this morning asking me about the electioneering statutes because he ran into people when he went to vote at his polling location and said, what is the rule here? And so we walked through it. I think it was a topic in the last legislative session. I think we'll see that resurface because part of the reason we're hearing more calls about it is because we're seeing more people get out in front of polling location. Historically, we might see a petition circulator or something else, but we're seeing more and more candidates and other people stand, count off 100 feet and stand right there. And it's not exactly what voters are looking for. So I think that topic will come up. But otherwise, it's really been a smooth election. Results are coming in. When I left the Capitol just a little bit ago, we had 4 counties that have finished reporting the results. Camas County had a whopping 32 people vote today.
Wow.
Raging election there in Camas County.
It counts.
Yeah, Ada County, I know this, so we don't know the results. That's what we'll be watching for as they report the results. But Ada County's turnout was 35%. They had 104,000 people vote here in Ada County.
Wow.
We know that just through the e-public information.
Say that number again so that I retain it.
The 100
number?
35%.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's really high. The Driving forces, no surprise to this group, were really number one was the Eagle Mayor's race. And I think that's one Ada County's watching, our office is watching as well, because it's one that has a runoff provision for mayor. As we look at those results, unless something dramatic happens, we're very high probability that we'll be having a runoff election. Same thing could happen in Boise, but we still got a lot of results to report for the city.
So those runoff elections, there's not going to be a lot of them. I know it's kind of city by city whether they have that provision on the books. Does that present unique challenges at the state level, or is this mostly a county clerk kind of a thing, and you just provide advice and counsel as you go along?
No, it's both. I think it's often lost how involved we are. We are kind of the backbone for how counties run their elections. So the systems that they use, we already had been planning meetings with Ada County about a week and a half ago in preparation for an Eagle runoff, just because knowing enough about the city of Eagle, the candidates, there was no clear front runner per se. We started already making plans for how it will go. One of the challenges with runoff elections, the timelines that we use, it's usually about 120 to 90 day lead up to running an election, just all the administration, mailing out absentee ballots, early voting, all that stuff. Well, now all of a sudden we have 30 days to get this done. December 5th will be the election day, for any runoff that occurs. So we're starting to kind of make plans. Of course, there's the Thanksgiving holiday in the middle. That doesn't really lend itself well. Also some people here are enough political junkies. There's the post-election process that the counties have to go through in terms of recording voter history, updating that information. Now they have to do it really, really fast, because any candidate who's involved in a runoff is going to want to know information from today's election. And it's really hard turnaround for the county folks to do it. So we'll be providing assistance where we can.
Interesting. Let's, if people want to comment and they are on YouTube or Facebook, they can, and we'll answer some questions if people have them. If you're on Twitter, you'll have to yell really loud because we won't be able to see that. But or go to YouTube. We've got 29 in 29 of 106 in for Boise. Votes coming in pretty good. I remember Gretchen and I sat here 2 years ago, and Margaret, and I remember cutting Margaret loose and being like, can you go call Phil McGrain, who was the county clerk, and be like, can you tell us why we're not getting any results? Not your problem anymore.
I remember that.
Night of results. I'm sure Councilmember Will.
I do.
What was the problem with that? It was really
what was
slow.
the problem?
Phil, what was the problem with that?
First of all, I don't remember it nearly as clearly as everyone else on this panel.
We had to sit here for like an hour.
I've been through a lot of elections.
I was ready to bust out my clarinet from high school. We didn't have anything else to do on the show with no results.
That's fantastic. I wish you would have.
As I recall, but actually we're anticipating, I'll be talking with you guys. I'm going to be talking to somebody else here shortly, but we'll be in our office well into probably 2 a.m., 3 a.m. this morning, waiting for results for some of the counties, particularly the northern counties. Part of the process, and I think, when Lucy's, having flashbacks here, yes, or PTSD, I don't know which one it is.
Both.
You have the initial results come in as the precincts roll in, but there's also like the write-ins and a bunch of other things that have to be worked through. And so especially gets later, there's a lot of effort to get information out, especially with the news cycle and the 10 o'clock news hour. But then some of it just drags on, right? And if
there's
you pull
no such
up
thing as the 10 o'clock news hour anymore. It's all the internet now.
I think in terms of local news, they might dispute that.
The older voters certainly get their news that way.
But I think one of the things,
they're watching.
I don't know if you guys pulled it up last time, but one of the interesting things is just the addition of all the cameras. I think probably in response to some of you or others, I've certainly shared out like, hey, you questioning whether we're working, watch the cameras, we're slaving away. I know we'll probably be pulling up Bonner County later and watching what's going on in Bonner County just to keep tabs on things. But it just takes a while. It was interesting. I did an interview this morning in Eastern Idaho, and someone was recounting that back in the 90s, we used to get results so much faster. And it's like, really, there's been so much more scrutiny on elections and so much higher expectations that with some of that, yes, we have new technology, but it actually just takes longer. I was around, this makes me sound old when I'm in the space, but I was involved with counting ballots on punch cards, and they were actually a lot faster. I have a video
That's
where we race a
fascinating.
punch card machine against the current machines, but there's good reasons we don't use punch cards anymore. So
it's so fascinating to watch the changes in technology. When I started in news I'll just date myself, at 99, and I helped to get the results from the old like DOS computer with Larry Gebert, our former colleague. He would run that, and we would run through this process to get it to the internet. And people were like, "Wait, I can get results on the internet." And at the time, this was at Channel 7, the Secretary of State linked to us for the results. And now it's like this, like mind-blowing. People would go insane if you link to the media for your election results.
Oh, sure.
And that's not that long ago, right? 14 years ago. How much has changed? That election security piece is always been important, but does the scrutiny make people a little bit more acutely aware of what they're doing, or are there changes there?
Oh, certainly. I mean, it has risen. So if you go back, I mentioned punch cards. So go back to the 2000 election, Bush v. Gore, all of that. I mean, the landscape changed dramatically. We saw huge improvements. But really, following the 2020 election, the questions that we deal with on a regular basis in terms of election security and other things, the fact that we have cameras now and that you can watch. I mentioned Bonner County. Not only can you watch Bonner County, you can listen in. They actually have audio also, so you can listen to what they're doing up there in terms of the elections process. That changes things. Trying to share more information. We see more people showing up to testing. So logic and accuracy tests that we do for the equipment, we're seeing more people show up to that. So it really has changed things. And I think we're trying to address that, as well as trying to add some improvements in terms of ease. I'm hopeful, right now we have projects underway in the Secretary of State's office, a major revamp of voteidaho.gov, the main election resource, trying to just get more tools for voters to get information, but also just make it more user-friendly for people to navigate what the voting process is, how to register to vote, how to request an absentee ballot, to check on things like that. And so it certainly has changed our landscape. I know for Saul and Trent and the elections team over at Ada County, I mean, they've beefed up things considerably just with some of the questions that have come in. But, they're also running a really good election right now. So,
and I have to just add, like, I got a front row seat.
Very true.
3 years ago. So
that's burned into my brain.
I know, right? We've got flashbacks, PTSD about that one. But I mean, I just want to echo, like, that was in the heat of the moment where there was such national scrutiny about our elections office, and it was truly awe-inspiring to see how incredibly hard the staff work at the Ada County Clerk's office and the expertise that Phil and his team had. And regardless of the outcome of that recount, I had accepted, like, whatever it's going to be, it's going to be. And I could lose, and that's just the luck of the draw. But following that process, being in the weeds of that, it was the hardest week of my life, I could say. But having those video cameras, I mean, so many people were so involved in that recount process when I ran. And it was just a beautiful case of, like, transparency, and this is how good government operates, right? When you have the tools and adequate staff that know and care about this work so well. So
Commissioner Pickering does not work for the PBS NewsHour, that's for sure. Let's we've got Mike Masterson with our Sydney kids. Sydney, can you give me a little mic check?
Oh no.
Let's see. Sydney, I cannot hear you. Do you have green lights on the side of the? I can't hear either one. Let's try this.
Yay!
Sydney,
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay.
Go.
Yeah, I'm
Take it
here with
away.
Mike Masterson. Mike, how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. It's still early in the night in terms of the reporting. We're encouraged by the numbers that we're seeing, but we're optimistic.
Awesome. You ran a campaign as a moderate, unaffiliated voter. How do you think people are responding to that?
Well, we'll have to see what the final results are of the election, but the way that the election's set up is it shouldn't be on a partisan basis, whether you're Democrat or Republican. The problems that our community faces aren't partisan in nature, but require a bipartisan approach to solving them. That's why I think, as an independent, that I'm in the best position to offer those solutions. I've worked across the aisle before, whether it was in problem solving with policing for the 10 to 10 zone, or for graffiti abatement, or for the river float. or even for the organized retail crime project that we put together for the business community. It means talking to people with differing views, bringing them together, and coming up with an agreed upon solution.
Awesome. Thank you. Don, any questions for Mike?
Yeah, I mean, Sydney, can you ask him if this were to go to a runoff, what are his plans for the next 4
One. Sorry, Don, can you repeat the last part of the
Yeah,
question?
if it goes to a runoff, what's his plan? If it goes to a runoff, what's the plan for the next 4 weeks?
If it goes to a runoff, what would be your plan the next 4 weeks?
Well, I don't know. When we kind of come to that point, we have to decide that. We'll be meeting with the campaign team tomorrow, discussing the strategy. But for right now, I'm kind of optimistic that tonight will produce a winner, and we'll see where it goes and see how long it actually takes.
Awesome. Thank you. Anything else over there?
Yeah, Sydney, thank you so much. We're going to let you go, and you're going to head on to your next stop.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, it worked, everybody.
Yay.
We were like, let's send somebody out live. We'll see if it worked, and it did.
Well
Thank
done.
you, Sydney
Well
and Autumn. They're going to go around the valley and go to a couple more campaign headquarters. You know, that mayor's race right now, we are, my mouse would quit disappearing. It would make my life a lot better. We have 29 of 106 same day. The lead isn't insurmountable. We don't really know where these votes are coming from. Does this interface, does it really show us Secretary McGrain? It doesn't really.
If you're
Because
able
it's
to,
got the early.
well, it has the early and absentee, so everything's populated. But if you were to scroll over any of the precincts, you'll be able to see what the votes cast are in any of the specific precincts to get a sense if it's includes the election day votes.
So, I mean, he is winning some precincts. We were talking earlier, 4 years ago, Mayor McLean won every precinct but one, even in the first round, which did go to a runoff. This time, you know, a little bit more of a split. Some people have said, oh, this Boise mayor's race, it's going to go to a runoff. And I'm like, well, it could. The difference, I think, this time is we had 4 candidates who'd held elective office before in that race. And, you know, one had to quit. But you had Rebecca Arnold, who was a current active commissioner. You had Lauren McLean, who was the active council president, and Dave Beater, who was the mayor. So you had a lot of very legitimate, well-known, high-name ID candidates. This time, you really kind of have 2 major candidates and then a couple of others who are drawing some votes. One of those candidates has been transparent with Margaret, like not really running to win. And so we can still see a runoff, but you have to have somebody that takes up a good 5, 6, 7, 10% for that to happen. So we'll see where that goes. Gretchen, why don't we roll through some of these
Yeah,
results?
let's check it out. So District 2 in Boise right now, Colin Nash, he's got 47% of the vote.
Over in District 3, we've got Kathy Corliss. This is a tight race. We're going to be watching this all night, and honestly, maybe until tomorrow.
Yeah.
We've got half the precincts in here. Kathy in that lead, Josh Johnston in second place, Teresa Votter next, and then Chris Blanchard last there over in 4.
Yeah, let's see, District 4, Jordan Morales, 70%.
No big surprise there. Over in 5.
I will say, Don, I anticipate for these Boise races, you won't have to wait nearly as late for some of these results, unless it's just if it's razor thin close, you'll have to wait all the way through the tail end. But just due to proximity to the Ada County Elections Office, compared to like the votes coming from Star or CUNA, that'll take a little bit longer.
So are they all driven? Is that they drive?
Yeah,
the
part of it's
box
just the
in?
physical proximity, the time it takes to shut down the polling place, and the people who've worked all 14 hours throughout the day to get the results in. And so proximity to the elections office does impact the timeliness of results.
Behind the scenes knowledge.
There you go.
And Don, can we get a shout out? I mean, Alexis, complimented the county, but the folks that work those elections,
Yes,
they have such
true.
long days.
Oh my gosh.
They're so lovely. They come in, they make people feel welcome. First time voters who have moved in, and then just regular voters that go every time. They're just marvelous, and huge shout out to them, because that's what makes the election work is people running those polling
And they're
places.
always the nicest people.
Yeah, super nice.
I've never met a not nice poll worker. And, and my wife voted same day today, and they gave my son and I voted sticker. And I was like, he didn't vote, people. I was like, if I put this on social media, the trolls will be like, your kid voted. I'm like, nope, just a sticker, I swear.
It's really important that people feel welcome when they come, and I think Ada County does a marvelous job of that. And and especially when you've got first time voters, they just really celebrate it and they make it really exciting.
Okay, let's take another break, and we're going to talk Eagle. We're going to bring Luke back in and Patrick back in, and keep it rolling. It's a fun election night. Secretary McGrain, did you say you had to be somewhere?
I can stay for a little bit longer. Yeah.
Well, let me stay.
Is that you, Shaman?
Yeah,
That's me.
That's Shaman out there. So we'll take a break, and we'll be back.
Hi, I'm Hank Patterson, here on behalf of Lithia Ford of Boise. Right now is Lithia's all-wheel drive event, because no matter where you drive, the freeway or the backcountry, no matter the conditions, snow, sleet, rain, mud, wet, dirt, you're going to want to drive on all your wheels, not just some of them. Tell you what, I drove to Laramie one time on 3 wheels, sparks flying everywhere, dog barking. God, boy, I could have used all my wheels on that trip.
This is Mike. Mike is a big proponent of positivity. He's all about keeping good energy in the room. From his uplifting and empowering wood-burning hobby to practicing good energy smart habits, like sealing around doors and windows to save energy in his home.
Why burn money?
Ooh, I like that. For more smart ways to keep good energy in the room, visit idahopower.com/save.
Isn't it supposed to be Carpe Diem? Not if you like crepes.
Mark, I've been looking at your labs. They look great. What have you been doing?
When you're the leader in disaster cleanup and restoration, how do you make like it never even happened happen? Let it rain, Randy! Woo! Yes! By being prepared for anything! Woo! Whatever comes your way, there's a pro for that.
Serve Pro, like it never even happened.
Welcome back to BoiseDev's live coverage of election night. I'm Gretchen Parsons, joined by Don Day, Luke Kavanagh, Patrick Bagent, and Alexis Pickering. Thanks so much.
We're going to keep rotating through. Secretary McGrain had to go. We'll bring Lucy and Margaret back as we go along here. So let's see. Let's talk about Eagle Mayor. And Mr. Shellman, you are kind of our Eagle expert. We one of 20 precincts, so a long way to go. We don't have a lot of new detail here, but we've got Stan Ridgway out with a slight lead, Brad Pike, the current city council president, in second place, and then Jason Pierce, the incumbent mayor, in third place. Nate, do you expect this to move as we go along?
I do expect it to move. I think you have a couple of confluences of two conservative groups, one being one splintering from itself or being reimagined in Eagle. Kind of a nouveau, or I don't know how to characterize it. And then you have what some people would call old guard, conservative establishment, and who identifies themselves and how will be up to the candidates. But each of these groups pick their person, and it's fascinating when you have what I would say with three top tier candidates in this race between Ridgway, Pike, and Pierce. Who was supporting them, what type of voter was supporting them, how they identified themselves, what their sticking points were. It's neat that you guys call it the growth vote, because that was the number one issue that Eagle has had. And they've had a huge communication issue. If you think I yell a lot, guys, some of you know I've listened to the program. I don't compare to an Eagle City Council meeting. So it's darn near the British House of Commons.
Screaming at somebody once, and it doesn't compare. So
yeah, I don't even factor. And I think not only do you see that in the mayor's race, but you're going to see it in the city council race as well. as you looked at the different candidates that are there, and again, that's a top two, vote for two, whether it's Christopher Hadden or Mary May or Craig or Robert. I mean, you have kind of 5 different flavors, and they would mostly all consider themselves conservative in one way or another. Some wouldn't. So
look at the map here. So everybody's got a color, except for Mary May, actually, but everybody else has got at least something that they're in the lead on.
They have a territory.
They have a territory.
I think this Eagle race is really interesting because I think, to kind of Nate's point, everybody but Christina Patterson has kind of aligned themselves saying that they're a Republican, they're conservative. More progressives have gotten behind Christina. Again, nonpartisan race, so there's no party there. Whereas when you look at the mayoral race, you have really strong turnout for the two quote unquote Republican or conservative candidates. But Stan Ridgway, who ran for county commissioner as a Democrat, he's the one who's leading the race. It's interesting how this election is playing out in Eagle.
Well, it's interesting too here that sort of non-affiliated candidate, her precincts are all the ones that are closest to Boise. Right?
That's a good point.
And so, I mean, you do that gradation as you go across the county often, and you saw it 4 years ago in the Lachiando race with Commissioner Davidson, and you saw that kind of like blue kind of fade away to red as the county went on. Meridian's more conservative than Boise, Nampa more conservative than Meridian. It kind of goes out like that.
Sure.
I think you see that a little bit in Eagle.
Can I ask Nate a question? Nate, how do you think the Avamore, vote and support is being impacted by this? Because obviously there's been some very vocal, especially in the mayoral race, right? We've got Brad.
I did a 3-hour show on a stoplight.
Man, I thought we had to go a long time tonight.
I'm just curious
stop, and I mean packed phones, 3-hour show for people to just call in and talk about one stoplight and how they wanted it, how it should have come in, who could talk, when they could talk. And I felt like everybody was talking in this except the people that lived in Avamore.
Margaret story, or was this Avamore? Was this the Dry Creek stoplight? We're talking about stoplights.
I think it's the Dry
Hashtag BoiseDev. You're talking about Dry Creek or Avamore?
Forgive me because I only did this. I actually did the program from the brewery pizzeria there, just so I could talk about it. So I don't think it was Dry Creek. I think it was Avamore. But regardless, it was kind of a sticking point to the point where the recall and they still want to challenge it. And talking with Stan Ridgway not that long ago, there still is a slim chance that they still might try to go back and try to undo Avamore if they can, if the lawyers say they can, if every I was dotted, every T was crossed, and then it kind of throws the whole thing back into limbo. So Avamore was a huge influence on this election. Sorry if I jumped your question. I
love it.
Tendency
That's
to do
great.
that.
We'll come back to Eagle. Let's go through some of these other races.
Sure.
Gretchen, Garden City.
Garden City, I'm curious about this one. So the top two candidates who get the most votes will win. James Page, he's got 36%. Then Kent Rasmussen, 33%. Hannah Ball, 30%.
I mean, this is one of those races that's going
close.
to come down to 4 votes, right? Like it's you just don't know. Garden City,
Right.
not a lot of people live in Garden City. So here's a fun fact, and I told myself I was going to mention this tonight. We were working on a story. I tweeted this. We were working on a story last fall about the 20th anniversary of Brent Cole's leaving office, and we had to spike the story because, frankly, there was things in the Boise mayor's office now that we needed to talk about. And so we dropped the story. But as I was going through that, I was looking at some old material from the former chief of staff, Gary Lyman's hard drive. Really wish I could have turned that story. But what was interesting is there was material on his hard drive that they had saved for forensic reasons about Boise and Garden City merging. And it didn't happen. We had a change in mayor. I don't think that was a priority for Mayor Beater. And sometimes I just think about, gosh, like what would that have happened if Boise and Garden City became one, and this council district sure would be drawn differently.
Yeah.
And Garden City residents probably, I don't think, would love that, honestly.
No.
And I'm not sure Boise residents would love that. And now, 20 years on, I think that's super unlikely, especially because the growth policies have been different. But anyway, I just think about that sometimes, about like what would it
I wonder what the pros for that were, why that was possibly thing.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't look too closely at it because it wasn't what I was looking for. But I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, there was a whole big file.
Fire, water, police, schools. Yeah.
I mean, there's some, I think, a fiscally conservative argument to be made that fewer governments mean less money. It's the ACHD model, right? Like, if ACHD were split up, which there's been talk about, all of a sudden Boise needs a road department, Meridian needs a road department, the county needs a road department, Eagle needs one, and all of a sudden it's like, well, we got to have 6 sets of plows. And so sometimes consolidated government can save money. That's not always the argument that's made, but I do think that there's an argument there. Let's look at CUNA mayor.
Yeah. Joe Steele right now, 55%. So.
Yeah, the incumbent there. Meridian. Mayor Simison, very strong lead.
74%.
Autumn and Sydney are going to go and hopefully get an interview with Mayor Simison here in the next hour, and so hopefully we'll get to hear from him today. The city council districts. Go.
I have a question. I have a question for Luke.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I'll hold him down.
Define the Meridian conservative. You have 2 mayors that are both conservative. You have different brands of conservative. One kind of more of a firebrand than the other.
Yeah.
And what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a big question, one that we could probably fill the whole time talking. And I think a lot of it is also based on how long people have lived in Meridian. So I think people who have lived in Meridian 5 years or longer kind of have that libertarian mindset. They want the government to leave them alone. They want to enjoy our community. They want to know when they call 911 that a fire truck's going to show up or a police officer is going to show up. We have seen, I think, recently is a increase in people I think they view that they are fleeing someplace, whether it be California, Seattle, Portland, and they're concerned that they don't want where they have moved to turn and where they feel they are fleeing from. And so they focus a lot more on societal issues. We saw that play out with the library. The city of Meridian passed a non-discrimination ordinance in 2018.
This was key in your race.
Correct. And there are people still that in this race, we're talking about that issue from 2018. Candidates who are running for office who weren't living in Meridian when we passed that have moved here and are now upset about that decision. So I think that's, Nate, what it really boils down to is how long you've lived in Meridian really determines what makes a Meridian conservative.
Interesting.
And I think that's really interesting with these results, if they hold true to the end, because Mike was a lead in the library effort.
He was the organizer.
Yeah,
yes.
he was the organizer. Yeah, disrupting the whole library system. And so I feel like as someone that vastly supports our libraries, this is a really good referendum on the support that the city provides in the library district if this holds true. Because this is really important that Simison's in place, and then that type of investment can continue.
And he was the very first person to testify in front of the county commission. I wanted to know if he camped out there all day or how he worked that, but he was the very first person to stand up and say Meridian supports libraries, right?
Yeah.
And at the time I remember watching being like, well, we'll see if that's going to be politically dangerous for him. Doesn't look like it.
And I think, credit to Mike Hahn. He doesn't care about the political ramifications. I mean, he's very devout in his beliefs, and it is his way or you're the opposition. And so I don't think that he led the issue around the library because he was trying to gain political points. Is that he believes very vehemently in his beliefs around that the library should have been closed because of the books that they were making available.
And I think the thing about Mike Hahn, we just talked about sort of this influx. He's not new. He's lived in the Treasure Valley for 30 plus years, worked at Micron in the 90s. And so it's, has he gotten support from some of the newer folks? I could say that's probably true.
I think so.
But he's not a transplant. And sometimes you get that, like, I'm a transplant, I'm going to run for office. That's not what happened there. Let's talk about these council races. Liz Strader leading Brad Hoagland. What's the
Liz?
This is still the same result. We don't have any new.
61% to Hoagland's 38%.
So what Secretary McGrain said is it takes a little time to drive those results. They don't have to go that far. Benjamin isn't that far forward.
They got to drive around.
I think there are some updates, at least in District 3 and District 5.
Okay, so in 3 we've got Doug Taylor on top of Bill Chandler.
Yeah, big lead.
5.
And Little Robert, 65%.
A return to the council. Do you ever think you'll run again and return to the council someday?
Oh, who knows?
Yeah.
Are you looking at me?
Like, you're leaving, so.
Well, yeah, fair enough. You never know. No, one of the things that I learned and figured out very fast was, I got elected, then COVID happened, then the police unrest happened, then city council districts happened, and the entire landscape for everything was completely different. So I couldn't make a 2 years out prediction then. I certainly can't make one now. Don't know what's going to happen.
Margaret, I think we have an extra seat because don't we have room for 6? Why don't you come back? And we'll
Come on down.
Yeah. I was like, wait, I'm counting and there's like 5 of us. We might as well.
Oh, we just made it harder for
We
her.
just made it. We just bumped the chair out. We'll bring Lucy back here in a minute. Let's go through the rest of the races and we'll take another.
Can I just real quick on this race,
yeah.
because I think this is also really an important race in District 5, and certainly Annabelle Roberts on the council left and has come back, but Todd Ebeling, I learned again, despite not living in District 5, I got a text last night that Todd Ebeling was one of the people that was also involved in that petition to close down the library. So again, I think also a big explanation to why you're seeing that big divide is that our community in Meridian is coming out squarely in support of libraries and against candidates that wanted to close them down.
These are the Meridian Council districts. I apologize, this map is not better. It's on the city of Meridian's website. The colors kind of blur together a little bit, but it's interesting to see.
I blame Luke.
I do too. Actually, that's why
It's going to be a reoccurring theme all night.
Yep.
A coded jab. Star Mayor, we've got Trevor Chadwick. Not really a big surprise there.
Yeah.
He's
No,
popular.
not at all.
85%. These are just the Ada County results. There are some 2C results because Star goes across the county lines. I don't have that pulled up, and I'm not going to because it's such a high margin. And then let's talk about the jail bond for a minute.
60.
Whoa!
Wow.
What is, I can't even see
it
it
is
from over here.
67.9% yes.
Okay.
We have 57 of 197 precincts, so roughly a quarter, a little more than a quarter, and it doesn't have far to fall. This has to get 67.67777, and we're at 67.9. Thoughts?
The trend has been down. We'll see.
You want to look at day of votes. I think that's going to be really telling is that if we're starting to see as precincts coming in that 65, 64, 63% in different precincts, that's just going to continue to pull them down. I think it's going to be close, but I think Alexis, you called it earlier. You don't think it was going to pass, and I have to say I agree with you. I don't think it's going to pass this time around.
So just a quick survey here. It looks like it's doing better on the Meridian side and not as well on the Boise side. Oh, that's not a liar. It's really hard to tell until we can really dive in.
Yeah.
And let's and this is nerdy here, but we're on the Boise.
This
Dev
is the
show.
hashtag nerdcast.
So let's do it. Ada County had 2 choices to pass this. They, through state statute, they could have gone with another option that would have only required 50% of the vote in order for them.
Levy, right?
No, it's a different mechanism to pay for infrastructure, and everyone will fall asleep if I explain it. And so that they could have used that other mechanism to take on debt for the jail and use the 50% margin, and they chose not to. They chose to go for the harder road and get 66% of the vote. I remember Chairman Beck telling the public, if we're going to do this, we want the whole community to buy in. We want 66% to say yes if we're going to hike your taxes. And that I think is an admirable position to take from a fiscal conservative, but also it's a risk. 66%, that's high.
Mm-hmm.
That is a high margin. And I'm wondering if folks in that camp are kicking themselves if they didn't go for that 50, because 50 looks doable to me right now looking at these numbers. 66, maybe not.
Yeah.
You possibly could look at a check down option as well. If you try the 66.7% way to go, fall just short of it, but you still fall short within the 50%. So you'll probably see this again in May.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, or November. I mean, is it a better May thing than November? We've got a presidential next. I mean, it's hard to say.
Either way,
calculus is always so strange on these.
Yeah.
Well, and we also have to, if I recall right, Canyon County tried multiple times to pass a jail bond, and my recollection tells me that the amount of people who voted for it fell over the course of those attempts. They people were just sort of like, you're asking me again? I told you no. Like, so we'll see what happens, but that was a deliberate choice to go for that 66%, and they might pay for that.
Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll come back. We've got more election night coverage as we go along. Thanks for being here. This is fun.
It's good times.
Yeah.
Nerdcast.
Yeah,
Nerdcast.
I love it.
Yeah.
hockey night in downtown Boise. Cam McGuire with you on this Saturday night. You're watching and listening to Idaho Steelheads Hockey on the Steelheads Broadcast Network.
This is Mike. Mike is a big proponent of positivity. He's all about keeping good energy in the room. From his uplifting and empowering wood-burning hobby to practicing good energy smart habits, like sealing around doors and windows to save energy in his home.
Why burn money?
Ooh, I like that. For more smart ways to keep good energy in the room, visit idahopower.com/save.
Isn't this supposed to be Carpe Diem? Not if you like crepes.
At Corwin Ford, we know you depend on your vehicle every single day in so many ways. It keeps you safe and warm. It brings you on the adventures you long for, and then it brings you home. Wherever life takes you, Corwin Ford is along for the ride. And we're honored to be a part of your journey. Corwin Ford, family driven for over 100 years.
Welcome back to BoiseDev's live coverage of election night. I'm Gretchen Parsons, joined by Don Day, Margaret Carmel.
We're gonna jam everybody in. Found another chair. Shout out to Freeform, which is where BoiseDev's office is. It is a business, interiors business. Jeff Heath is the owner, and he graciously lets us use his showroom. The nice thing is when you need a piece of furniture, it's like, oh, let's go find a chair.
Yeah.
And so if everyone wants to just kind of like compress towards me a little bit, because Alexis is like,
Like, I don't want to completely.
there we go. There. Now we don't have to like have
Too close to you, Pat.
musical chairs
That's
on
all right.
person out. We still have Nate Shellman along with us, and let's go look at some results, everybody. How about that? So we need to get rid of. We do. Let's see. Get rid of that, and let's refresh.
We need a sound effect.
I like that. Says the radio guy.
Yep.
Okay, so our precincts here is 49 of 106, so we're about half.
Yeah, McLean right now, she's got 57% to Masterson's 41. I thought he's gained a bit since last time.
He has. We were kind of looking at the math in our break here. And it looks like Masterson's going to have to get about 60% plus of the outstanding vote based on what Secretary McGrain had told us about turnout today. So right now it's looking pretty good for the incumbent mayor, but we've got some time to go. You still have the possibility of a runoff. You know what? It looks like we have
our live
Sydney and a candidate. Sydney, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Who do you have?
I have Jordan Morales here with me.
Jordan Morales.
Oh, can you hear me?
Welcome.
Are we testing? Are we
We're
live?
good. We're live.
Oh, you're live.
So, Jordan, how are you feeling tonight?
You know, I'm feeling really good. It's been an awesome campaign, honestly, connecting with thousands of Boiseans through all of the campaigns in the Valley. I think voter engagement's been really great with the new districting system, and it's allowed for candidates like myself to speak with a lot of voters who probably never had a city councilman or a woman knock on their door before. You know, in different areas that haven't been represented as well on city council. So it's been really, really fun to see people excited about that. So many people excited about this election. Really interested to see how those returns look. I've been in the basement with not the greatest Wi-Fi service down there. So excited to see what that turnout looks like. But I do think Boise is speaking that, they like where Boise is going and a lot of the things, the ideas that we're working on. So really excited to be part of that in the future.
You've run a campaign against a bit of a quieter candidate. So what are some tactics that you've used to try and set yourself apart?
Yeah, I think, I tried not to focus too much about what the other candidates in the races were doing. I just really tried to help people understand who I was. I grew up in Boise. I've lived in our district, called it home for the past 17 years. and just really feel like I know our neighborhoods. I love knocking doors. I'm excited to be able to do town halls and bring, city resources to our neighborhoods so they know what's going on and in our city, so they can provide feedback. And so I think I really just wanted to focus on what we can do by being active. And so, with my campaign, I wanted to be as active as possible, and that's how I'm going to be as a city councilor. And I think that was a stark contrast, and I think people really do want someone that's going to knock on their door and going to explain something maybe they've heard, maybe they've read on BoiseDev. Honestly, a lot of the things that some of the biggest issues are covered so well on local media like this, and not a lot of people, some people have normal lives where they're busy and they're not reading these things, right? And being able to illustrate the stuff that we're doing is really, really important. So I think that was my biggest focus. Didn't worry too much about how that differentiation would work. I wish voters in our district had more choices. I'm always a fan of good choices, and more good choices you have, then no matter who wins, you win, right? But I'm excited to be able to serve in the way that I've campaigned. Absolutely.
Great. Don, guys, any questions for Jordan?
Yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to let you go. There's other candidates there. We'll let you go grab those, and we'll keep talking.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Great. Hey, this is fun. Live candidates and the whole bit. So I think that it was fairly expected that he'd win. Janet Burke, 31% of the vote is not nothing. Margaret, she was not one of the people. She was one of the few people who didn't speak to us. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yep.
I called her. I asked her, like I asked every other candidate, hey, can we set up an interview and talk about your campaign? She declined. Basically said that he asked me she needed my questions written out, and I said no, I don't do that, but you can read some other articles and get a sense of what I'm going to ask you about, and really it's an opportunity for you to speak. And she declined. The only materials really about her, she had no website, were just biographical materials about her career. Really all we know about her is that she's an Ada County GOP committeeman. And so that tells voters what they need to know is, maybe if you're affiliated with the Republican Party, you're saying thumbs up, and if you're not, then maybe thumbs down. And we just don't have a lot of info.
I will say I really appreciate, we did almost 50 candidate profiles this time in every city in Ada County, every contested race, and we had, I believe, just 3 candidates decline, and they're great. Yeah. But we really appreciate when people talk to us, and we're just trying to tell people what's going on in the races. And so big pitch to people who did, and I understand what people don't. But
she was interesting.
Yeah. What insight do you have? What insight do you have, Nate?
Is that she talked to you? Is that right?
Yes, she did. She agreed to come on the show for half an hour. I made the call out for any candidate who wanted to come on the show. They had to agree to answer whatever questions I fired at them, and agreed to answer them and the audience questions. They could not plant audience calls, which has been known to do. They also had to fill a toy box full of toys for a station promotion that we're doing.
I do like the extortion for Toys for Tots, though. If you're going to extort people, Toys for Tots is the way to go.
Yeah, well, if we charge, we can't take the stuff. So I don't know what the U.S. Marine Corps has to say about it, and I didn't ask him. Anyway, I found her immigration and homeless policy to be quite interesting. Her idea on fighting the homeless policy was to buy bus tickets to other cities and just send people away. She worked in bookkeeping. She works in billing, and she's lived. She grew up in McCall, moved here, been here 30 years, and she is involved in the Republican Party. But as far as ready for prime time, I don't think she was. To put it nicely, not ready for prime time would be the nicest way to put it. She knocked on 45 doors. Mine wasn't one of them.
You're in precinct 2.
I am. I am close to somebody else that's on this panel. I live just about 3 minutes from them, and I saw them steal coffee from their wife this morning. So there wasn't really much of a choice.
7:45 is a lot. Let's just say that.
Without coffee.
Yes.
So yeah, it's. I'm not shocked by this turnout.
Let's look at some of these other Boise Council races in District 5. This is the one. Oh, I'm sorry. District 3. These districts, changing all the numbers and then changing them again is really great.
We're going to do it again in December, Don.
That's good. I really look forward to that. This is a race that I think we all kind of wondered how it might go. Kathy Corliss with a lead right now, not insurmountable. We have half the precincts here, and you just don't know how it's going to go. Josh Johnston ran a pretty strong campaign. He was a Republican and said that pretty openly. Teresa Fodder, I believe, had a Republican voting background. Didn't emphasize that so much. Works for the Idaho Food Bank these days. Chris Blanchard said he was Republican. Texted folks saying, "I'm a Republican. Use the elephant logo." But then also said on Twitter that he wasn't running as Republican. So there's kind of some confusion there, I would say, is fair. And so we'll see if Kathy walks away with this and joins the council or not. Let's see. Let's talk About Eagle some more.
There
you go. Here's on top.
I mean, this is a
huge
32, 32, 27.
This is a close race, and I think this is really just illustrates the change that happens between looking at only early voting and then shifting to day of vote. Because it's going to slide more conservative. But at the same time, again, don't just look at the percent. Don't just look at who's in first. Look at those vote numbers. We have less than 50 votes separating Brad Pike and Jason Pierce.
What's the percentage? I can't read it from here.
It's 33.2% and 32.8%.
Okay.
That is
oh my gosh.
That is
do that?
I just realized so for you at home you can't see this, but I realized I can zoom in for those of us who are vision challenged.
Or just on the other side of the table, right? You just
Maybe
put
that did go out over here. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. So I was just looking at Avamore. I think this is all early and absentee for Avamore. I'm going to guess just based on this, but Mayor Pierce obviously has a strong lead in Avamore. That's not really a big surprise. We'll just see how this goes along. This is going to go to Roth. I think we've got 6 of 20 precincts. We don't know who the two are going to be. And the dynamics are fascinating because I think it could be any two of these three gentlemen, Pierce, Pike, Ridgway, and the number of scenarios there's 3 different scenarios. And
or Captain Mark. Who is the voter going to identify with next? That's Stan, or who's known around the area as Captain Mark. Are they going to go to Pike or are they going to go to Pierce?
Yeah.
If it stays this way.
Yeah, I mean, if it's Pike and Pierce, do the Ridgway voters? Ridgway ran as a Democrat in the. Do they go to Brad because they just don't like Jason, or do they split?
Or do they stay home?
They stay home.
Something that's an important dynamic, I think, to talk about is really this growth is a major issue here. Jason Pierce in Eagle is synonymous with Avamore, with annexing Avamore and his decision to grow city limits
and parking lots.
And yes, and the parking lot lawsuit. But really, he is known for that. And then we have Brad Pike, who voted against it, and Stan Ridgway, who has a vocal opponent who opposed it, and other things like that. And so you have to really think about that. Of Jason Pierce is winning, but a lot of the people who, again, people are splitting off. No, they're voting against Avamore, but they're splitting in 2 different directions. And that might be really the driving force at the end of the day. Is those people, they might vote for the no Avamore candidate, no matter who it is.
Don, I want to say a couple things just about Eagle because my district borders both Eagle and Meridian, and I was in Eagle on Saturday helping candidates, and it was an amazing thing because people were very engaged in Eagle. I mean, you could tell there was an election. Eagle World was full of signs.
Crazy.
We were, there were different candidates, contingencies on corners, waving signs. I mean, this is democracy at work, and I think from my perspective, I'm surprised by some of these numbers, and to Margaret's point, they can change a lot, but people who have moved to Eagle, to Luke's point, they're politically active. Yeah. They have moved to Eagle for a reason. They want to keep Eagle the way that they moved in. And I think we're going to see even more political activity out of Eagle.
I think to Lucy's point, I don't think we're going to get to 50% for any candidate tonight, but I think those that their candidate doesn't quote unquote win, I don't think those voters stay home. I think that they stay engaged. Lucy's point, typically election day before, you see people out waving signs. For the past week along Eagle Road in Eagle, they've been waving signs. People are fired up for their particular candidates. And even if their particular candidate of choice doesn't win, I don't see them staying home. I only see them getting more engaged with
I wrote a story coming out of the Beater and McLean race 4 years ago before the runoff, and I talked to a political science expert in Kentucky, I believe, who had written a book on runoffs. And I was like, so what do you think? And he's like, the person who wins the first race wins like 80% of the time. This is a time where I don't know if that'll be true, to be honest, because you have these weird dynamics, and I think it'll be interesting to see, what happens. And I know we have a lot to say. We can come back to that, but I want to talk about the council really quick.
I want to talk about that too.
This is a top two: Mary May, Christopher Hadden right now, but it's super close. And it's fascinating. You look at the map over here. Mary May doesn't have a single precinct in her color. I mean, she hasn't won a single precinct, but she has the most votes because she's got enough chipped away in all those little precincts.
And let's talk about how different Mary May and Christopher Hadden are. Christopher Hadden has made his name as a huge critic of Jason Pierce and a huge critic of the decision to annex Avamore. He got in the mayor's race 4 years ago explicitly being an anti-Avamore candidate. I mean, Christopher Hadden is someone who's showing up every week at Eagle City Council in public comment criticizing the city. So he's in that camp. Mary May is an ally of Jason Pierce. She's an establishment candidate. She had all that same sort of backing from developers and the same sort of funding that Pierce does. And so if we see both of them win, which again, this could change, that shows just how split Eagle really is.
Alexis, do you have something you want to add?
No, it's okay.
So, and if you really want to be a junkie, what you do is you overlay what precincts the current mayor is winning, which one's Mary is winning, and which one Craig is winning because they ran as a team. Because that's going to show you where things are evening out. Because to Margaret's point, there was an effort to have a slate. And that was very clear in the marketing.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because there was some talk about that in Boise about how there's this idea of a slate, and I think a lot of that is because the scrap shop, Melanie Falwell's firm, did the races for McLean, Morales, help me.
Nash and Stitt.
I'm tired.
And Jimmy.
And Jimmy, right? And so, but they didn't market or advertise that way. There was a little bit around the edges, but in Eagle, you very had that clear, like, hey, we're the team here. I want to go look at the jail bond very badly.
Yeah, let's see.
Me too.
It is
66.7 in favor, which is
going down.
Exactly.
It's going down.
Well, and here's the thing. So this rounds. This rounds. It rounds to one digit, and so I don't actually know if that's passing or not, because if it was 66.65, it would round to 66.7, which would be losing. If it's 66.68, it would also round to 66.7 and would be winning.
Where's Phil when we need him?
I know, right?
Yeah.
So we don't actually know if this is even passing or not right now because of that rounding.
It's a matter of time.
One thing about that map, though, I assume it's colored 50%. If you're 50% in favor, you're dark blue.
It is.
And you've
right.
lost it. It's too bad. It'd be nice if it was colored for
It
2/3.
would be.
But they've lost a precinct there. So there's at least one precinct that's more than 50% against.
11 people in South City County.
Fair enough.
I was going to say, where is that precinct?
How does that relate to where your district is, Lucy?
It is not.
So it's going to be interesting to just watch and see how that goes. This isn't trending in a way that the county commission is probably happy with. Sheriff Clifford is probably a little nervous right now.
You know what? I think they would be happy because this started really late. And we've all talked about there wasn't a lot of information. I think people did what they could. But that is a huge number for a tax increase, even if it doesn't pass. I mean, we have school bonds in this state that can't get that.
Right.
That have needed for years.
In this county.
In this county, yeah.
Yeah, in this county.
The Boise bonds tend to pass. The Meridian bonds, the West Ada
levies,
tend to not struggle.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's why don't we run through everything? It's
Sure.
been a bit.
Yeah, let's see.
And then we need to let's take the break first, so we
come
can
back
get
and
these burned off. And we'll be right back.
Ooh, it just went down.
Hi, I'm Hank Patterson, here on behalf of Lithia Ford of Boise. Right now is Lithia's all-wheel drive event, because no matter where you drive, the freeway or the backcountry, no matter the conditions, snow, sleet, rain, mud, wet, dirt, you're going to want to drive on all your wheels, not just some of them. Tell you what, I drove to Laramie one time on 3 wheels, sparks flying everywhere, dog barking. God, boy, I could have used all my wheels on that trip.
Mark, I've been looking at your labs. They look great. What have you been doing?
When you're the leader in disaster cleanup and restoration, how do you make like it never even happened happen? Fire it up, Randy! By being prepared for anything! Whatever comes your way, there's a pro for that.
Serve Pro, like it never even happened.
All right, welcome back to our live coverage of Election Tuesday. Hello there, Nate.
Hello.
Just turned into the Nate Shellman show after dark.
They updated the numbers.
I wouldn't say that. Love you, Nate, but yeah, that sounds creepy.
Nate Shellman unplugged.
That's what
no.
it's true now. Okay, let's go through the results. And Gretchen, would you like, we've dinged you, so you should get a chance to respond. Nate.
Oh yeah, well I was going to say right before they just updated the numbers because they heard you talking, Don, and giving the scientific analysis of how they round numbers, and the numbers just did change for the Ada County jail bond to what I'm looking at, 66.5.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So thank you, Don Day. Thank you, Don Day, for clearing that up, and they heard you.
That's not true.
I know.
But yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Let's start back at the top. Gretchen, lead us out.
All right, let's check it out. So Lauren McLean, right now she's got 57%.
In District 2 in Boise, Colin Nash out with a fairly sizable lead. Those precincts again, 9 of 15, so closing in there. Hillary Smith in second place, Grant Burgoyne, a Democrat, in third place there.
John, will you go down because the green is interesting and we haven't talked about. So Jesse he is winning a precinct.
That's not right. That's no.
Can't be.
Can somebody get Trent? No, it's not right, because Jesse. Let me zoom in here. So Jesse, the precinct is green,
but it should be Hillary.
But it should be,
and that's 5 Mile.
I can't get it to do all the things I want to at once.
That's the boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not right. So if you look at here, he's only got 28 votes, whereas Hillary Smith has. There's something wrong.
Which would make sense because Hillary lives around that part of town.
Yeah. So she actually, it should be her color, not. So we should probably quit trusting that because it looks like there's some data glitches there. Good note though.
District 3, Kathleen Corliss, she's in the lead with 34%.
And Josh Johnson in second. It's still tight. We've got half of the precincts in there, so that could change. And I believe the last time we had this up, Josh was in the lead, so it's kind of flipped around a little bit.
There's very few votes separating the two.
Very few. District 4, Jordan Morales, who we heard from a little bit ago, is going to win that tonight. District 5, Meredith Stead, also going to take that home. Eagle Mayor, which we've been watching closely all night.
Oh, Brad Pike's now.
Change now. Brad Pike, going different. Barely.
Hey, John, can you make that bigger for?
I believe so.
It's okay. No one cares about the lowly ACHD commissioner.
No, you're at the table. Come on. You're at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Yes, that's, I mean, I just don't know.
9 votes.
Wow.
9, count them 9, between Brad Pike and Jason Pierce.
and it's only a couple hundred between
Wow.
Pierce and Ridgeway there, where
But Ridgeway's remained fairly flat with each other.
Yeah.
it has.
Yeah.
And I think that makes some sense.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Let's also kind of do the same math we were doing in Boise District 3. I think Brad Pike and Stan Ridgeway represent a very similar electorate. People that are frustrated with Jason Pierce. And if you add those two candidates together, that's quite a message there that the majority of Eagle, whether, they are not happy.
Mm-hmm.
That vote is split. But to me, that's a pretty resounding message. Hey, we're not super pumped about everything that's that Mayor Pierce is doing.
It's interesting. Like we've talked about, each city can decide essentially if they want to have runoffs or not. And if Eagle didn't have a runoff, let's say Pierce got into the lead, he'd be the mayor again. Has a runoff, he might not be. I mean, it's just this fascinating dynamic of there's a lot to say about runoffs. Are they good? Are they bad? There's a cost.
It's almost an argument for ranked choice voting, Don.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, stop.
Oh, geez. Come
We
on.
will be talking about that, I have a feeling, a year from.
Says the short timer. Okay.
Yeah, right.
But
You might-
I
you
mean,
might-
it is a good point, though.
it is a, I mean,
It's
it is
a very
fair
good
point.
point.
I mean, ranked
It's a
choice,
very
what
good
would
point.
the outcome
That's
be?
what
Yeah.
that's what it is. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you wouldn't have to have the expense of another election.
Right.
You might get Nate coming down here. I mean, if you keep talking about ranked choice voting,
We're not
Working
that
on
far
it.
away. You could show up. I don't believe we're out of
Nate's
chair.
gonna
I was-
drive down.
I was just on a panel with Governor Otter about this, and if Nate comes down here, I'm going to bring Governor Otter with me because he came out swinging hard on this one. It was interesting. Not a local thing. One thing about this, though, that I was talking with Secretary McGrain about, something that I noticed kind of internally at the city with the runoff we did last time, is it made it very difficult and very rocky for the city staff to do that transition on that condensed
Yeah.
timeline. The runoff gets, the gloves tend to come off. It's a more contentious election. It's decided in December. And look, you never want to make an argument that we should change our policy because it's hard on government workers, right? That doesn't tend to land. But the reality is, if you're changing mayoral administrations after a gloves off runoff campaign over the Christmas holiday to be sworn in at the beginning of January, it's tough. It's real bumpy internally.
Trying to see if we can get Mayor McLean to come on and join us.
And I think the electorate kind of get burnt out too. Like they're
Yes.
really,
Yeah.
they're really tired of just the vitriol or the over bombardment, right, of the messaging.
Yeah, that race in Boise 4 years ago, I think was tough all the way through, and it got a lot tougher in those last 4 weeks. And the Statesman did a story with Mayor Beater where he responded to a constituent, and you could feel his kind of angst coming out of that. So you as a human, you felt for him as a human having to have gone through that process. And so, I think it's easy to forget that politicians are people sometimes, as we sit with a bunch of politicians, especially at the municipal level. Like, you go and you knock doors and you talk to people, and there is vitriol in the atmosphere. But at the end of the day, you're all, doing a job that doesn't pay a ton to go out and have impact on your issues. And I think it can be just tough on people. So I'll quit off my soapbox. But
Well, we keep going. Keep going.
yeah, I'm just, they're
I
people
am
watching who are like, you're an establishment.
This is a massive surprise to me.
Yeah.
This, just looking at this result and I'm going to go back to what you're saying in a second, Alexis. Chris Haddon would not. I mean, I'm not saying negative things about him. He's a great guy, just like everyone up there on the slate. But he was not the one that I expected to be bringing in consistently the most votes, refresh after refresh. He was a very outsider candidate who got a very small percentage of the vote for mayor 4 years ago, and it seems like his effort to be out in front and constantly criticizing Mayor Pierce and posting a lot on Eagle conservative Facebook pages is paying off.
I mean, look, there's clearly a fairly strong constituency in Eagle that are not happy with Mayor Pierce. Whether or not that means that Mayor Pierce will still be the mayor, we don't know. But then you have Mary May, who's a lot. It's just these crazy dynamics out there. Alexis, you wanted to add something?
Not to this one, but I just wanted to highlight that you kind of glossed over Meredith and Jeremy's race. And I don't think that I mean, honestly, I didn't think it would be that big of a difference, because Jeremy, he's I believe retired, right?
He's an organizer.
He's an organizer.
He knows how to campaign.
He's been door knocking relentlessly.
He made a significant donation to his own campaign. Put his own money on the line.
Exactly. And I feel like that this is going to be interesting if Meredith wins, but also keeps that big of a lead, because he did do a lot of work with that voter contact. So I think that, just as a side note, that isn't just something that I expected to just kind of roll in.
Let's talk about the power of incumbency. She is a late incumbent, as is Colin Nash. They've been on the council with you all.
I don't
months.
think
You think it helps?
No,
I mean,
don't.
She ran in that other race against Jimmy Halliburton.
I believe we have the mayor. So is that Mayor McLean? We can't tell. We're going to ask. Yes.
Makeup brush.
It does. Let's talk to Mayor McLean. Sydney, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm here with Mayor McLean. Mayor, how are you feeling about the numbers thus far?
We're feeling optimistic. I'm so pleased to see the result in the council races and what we're seeing so far. It's making us feel like people of Boise understand that this race was about our values, about our future, and folks are committed to making sure we're a safe and welcoming city for everyone.
What makes this race different than the one you ran 4 years ago?
That's a great question. Say it's different in the sense that I came into it now after 4 years of unprecedented challenges and having delivered on a lot of work. And then we had conversations about that. And I'd say what's the same is the tack that we took with my campaign, with talking to people as I've served as mayor, is to think about and demonstrate that in the city of Boise, you can both meet the needs in the moment and plan for the long term. And when we stick to turning challenges into opportunities and taking care of people and our vision for the future, Boiseans respond.
Awesome. Thank you. Don, guys, any questions for Mayor McLean?
Yes, Sydney, I'd like to ask, would you ask her, she obviously ran against Mike Masterson. Is there anything from his campaign that she might take away and use in her next term?
Great question. So Don wants to know, after running against Mike Masterson, if there's things that you've learned from his campaign that you might take away and use in the next term.
Great question. I think you learn things in every campaign. And what I've learned in this campaign, in the thousands of conversations that I've had at the doors, is that Boiseans are both optimistic about our future, but know that we need to address the challenges that we have as we grow, to ensure that our housing remains affordable. They want us to lead boldly when it comes to climate, keep the city safe as we have, and to continue to talk about the future while working with the team that I have to meet the needs of today. And as I set up on the stage in all those conversations, I've learned time and time again that there's so much more that unites us than divides us, which is what we hear about too often.
Anything else, guys? What was that?
Nate, do you have a question you'd like Sydney to ask?
I don't right now. No.
Okay. All right.
Mayor McLean, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
I want to just add to that, to her point, Dawn. If we see a sweep, so if we see, Colin succeed in that race, and Meredith and the mayor, I think that's a really clear mandate that the investments and priorities on housing, these other pieces, need to continue. Versus if, Colin doesn't win, I think that's going to be a really tricky one, potentially. But I think that's where we could see, okay, maybe some of parts of Boise aren't as thrilled about some of the priorities that the mayor and the council have made. And so I think that generally, that's what I'm kind of like taking away from this, is like those types of distinguishing pieces. And that's what I'm looking for in terms of are Boiseans happy with the status quo or not?
It is interesting. And, I will note, so the mayor didn't answer my question there. She kind of danced around and talked about doors. And so it's a question I'm going to ask her again, because I'm curious if she heard things from Mike that she's like, oh, there's good ideas there. And I get on the moment not answering the question, but I think it is interesting in any campaign when you have a strong competitor, there has to be things that you're like, oh, that's an approach that might be interesting. It'll be interesting to hear what she might say, and we'll follow up.
I think the other thing that you have to look at is, once the numbers, are solidified, is kind of where the core is, because Meredith brings out a good point, but also I think what you're going to see is I think you're going to see Masterson win this,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you're going to see this part of Boise go for McLean. And the question has always been, and I wish I had my Tim Russert, dry race
We've
board
got one that
here.
can roll it
Oh,
out.
excellent. I mean, the question was always like, where would the numbers be? And Masterson would have had to win massively in West Boise, and it doesn't have great voter turnout in West Boise. It's never had. He would have to win huge in those districts in order to compensate for those parts of Boise that have a higher voter turnout.
And I'll be interested too to see how she performs in your district, right? You weren't on the ballot, and we haven't talked about that tonight. The reason you're here is that you were anointed.
I don't really like that word.
but they changed the law, and so because you didn't have a,
I mean, anointed by God. Is that what you're talking about?
wow, you took it to a sharp place.
I mean, if you're going to use the word, I'm going to take it all away. I'm teasing.
So you weren't on the ballot.
Yeah.
We might have driven some turnout if you had a challenger to your left or to your right. But then that was maybe a little bit offset by Council President Halliburton wasn't on the ballot either.
Well, I think that
Sydney with another candidate. Let's go to her with Colin Nash. Hey, Sydney.
Hey guys, I'm here with Colin Nash. Colin, how you feeling?
Hi, I'm feeling good. Still some more votes to count, but it's looking like the results are going to hold.
You ran a campaign against another well-known Democrat in what's kind of become a swing district. What was that like?
Yeah, Grant and I served in the legislature together. We've been friends a long time. Don't see eye to eye on a lot of housing issues that were central in this campaign. Interfaith Sanctuary Homeless Shelter, the zoning code rewrite, the mayor's affordable housing initiatives. But these are policies that I'm very supportive of, and it seems like the voters in the district are too.
Awesome. Guys, any questions for Colin?
Sydney, no, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Appreciate it.
While we're talking District 2, I want to go back to something that Patrick said earlier about the divide being a generational divide. And I think that's really, really a key point here, but also not just generational, but a divide amongst the Democratic Party. I mean, really what we're seeing here is, I would say, a pretty strong rejection of the more conservative end of the Democratic Party and more of an embrace of, hey, let's build more housing. Let's build more housing. Let's invest more heavily in these social services and things that maybe younger people are thinking about in terms of housing density, as opposed to the perspective of no, let's keep things less dense. Let's keep things single family houses, because older voters demographically are more likely to own one of those single family houses and be protective of it. Whereas a younger, more progressive wing of the party, like Colin Nash, are going to say, no, if we don't build more housing, there won't be opportunities for people to live in this district and to have places that they afford. And so I think that it's not just the age demographic, it's also like class and status of where they are
Absolutely.
economically.
Let's talk about Meridian, because we have not done that for a while. Mayor Simpson out on top. Gretchen, if you want to.
Yeah, 71%.
He'll take that pretty handily. We've got well more than half the precincts. District 2.
Liz Strader, she's got 54%.
4 of 7 precincts. We got 3 precincts outstanding in day of. Councilmember Kavanaugh, I know you served with both of these folks. I'm sure you have to choose your words carefully, but what do you think about this?
Well, it's interesting. When we started tonight, we started a little early because results came in, and during that time, the early voting and absentee showed a significant margin of support for Councilmember Strader. Now we're seeing day of voting come in. Here's what's kind of interesting, because we're doing the nerd side, is I believe neither Councilmember Hoagland nor Councilmember Strader's districts have come in yet. So that's going to be really interesting to see how those two precincts are going to really determine this
what
race.
was Dan Rathers would say back in the day, like tighter than the lug nuts on a 57 Chevy or something like that. You're a journalism major, Lucy. So
yeah, I know.
I mean, we'll see, right? Like that could be a big change.
Yeah, I think that we could see some shifts here. It's hard, right, for any candidate who finds themselves against a insurmountable or a big lead with the early voting and absentee to be able to overcome that. But Councilmember Hoagland is making big strides with each time the precincts are coming in.
Okay, we're going to come right back to Meridian, but Sydney is with Meredith Stead. Meredith, welcome back. Oh.
Don says, welcome back. Thanks, Don. Yeah, it would be much more fun to be sitting with you guys, but here I am watching it come in, which is a little bit more anxious, but still feeling good.
Still feeling good. It's you're running against a candidate with a very similar platform to you. You've done that in the past. So what's it like doing it again?
I had actually a really different, I guess my whole attitude felt a little different this time. I felt much more relaxed the whole time. Still wasn't sure how things are going to turn out, but feeling hopeful and with the early results that have come in.
Awesome. Don, guys, any questions for Meredith?
She's not stuck to a desk, is that correct?
You're not stuck to a desk, is that correct?
I have not been at a desk. I did about 10, 11 hours of phone banking today, which was heavy desk time, but happy to be out with a lot of the volunteers tonight.
Awesome.
Okay, Sydney,
All
thank
right.
you. Come on
Thank
back
you,
down
guys.
here. Come back downtown.
Okay, we'll
Thank
see you back downtown.
Okay. So we'll explain the reference. When we did this 2 years ago, Meredith joined us. She had run against Jimmy Halliburton and lost, and so she came on, and her bracelet got stuck to her desk at home. And she literally could not move off the desk. And I don't actually think she remembered it. She's probably got the candidate brain. So that's a deep cut. Okay, let's go back to Meridian as we were before we came. So let's see. Let's talk about three. I think we've talked about two as well.
That's pretty much stayed the same. Doug Taylor, 70%.
And 5, Ann Little Roberts.
Yep, but 62%.
Did you serve with Ann, or was she before?
Yeah, I was fortunate. I served with Ann for her first term when she came on, and was a great member of our council. I'm sure my fellow council members that are up here recognize there's a benefit of healthy collaborative debate, and Ann definitely participated in that. And frankly, when she ran for mayor 4 years ago, she was the candidate I supported. I thought she was the right mayor at the time, and so I'm excited there's a possibility that she's going to come back. And I think that serving is really a team sport, and having different perspectives and ideas really makes for the best results in the end. I think she'll contribute greatly if she's elected back.
Would there be any friction there in Meridian from that mayoral race a while back, or no?
Nate, that's a great question, and this is what kind of makes Meridian a great place to be. Is Mayor Simonson endorsed Ann, went out knocking doors for her. To be a competitor 4 years ago and an endorser now. I expect if Ann's elected back to the council, listen, we all are going to have conflict at times with our mayors, but I expect that Ann will continue to work collaboratively and cordially with Mayor Simonson.
Let's look at the jail bond, and then we're going to take our last final break.
66.5 in favor.
That's
Wow.
razor thin.
Razor thin. We have a ways to go. That is with, what do we got? 114 of 197, so it could go.
Still got about 10% more to go, according to Secretary of State Phil McGrain.
And Don, what
He said 35.
do they round up?
60 point. Yeah. Well, we don't know. So this looks like this would be failing. 66.5 is below that 66.6.
Okay.
66. So it's losing right now. It could tick back up, but it looks like quarter.
It'd be less by 10%.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Again, we still have.
Who can ask for a recount on a levy? If a candidate comes in, within a certain whatever it is percentage,
county commission,
they can ask for a recount. Can you ask for a recount on a levy? I don't know.
Commissioners.
Well, that is nerdcast material right there.
1%. That's the threshold. For
Yeah.
when,
And how are you familiar with that
0.01%.
again?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, we're gonna take our final break, and then we will come and wrap things up here.
All right.
Great.
Hi, I'm Hank Patterson, here on behalf of Lithia Ford of Boise. Right now is Lithia's all-wheel drive event, because no matter where you drive, the freeway or the backcountry, no matter the conditions, snow, sleet, rain, mud, wet, dirt, you're going to want to drive on all your wheels, not just some of them. Tell you what, I drove to Laramie one time on 3 wheels, sparks flying everywhere, dog barking. God, boy, I could have used all my wheels on that trip.
look great. What have you been doing?
When you're the leader in disaster cleanup and restoration, how do you make like it never even happened happen? Fire it up, Randy! By being prepared for anything! Whatever comes your way, there's a pro for that.
Serve Pro, like it never even happened.
Welcome back to Boise Dev's live coverage of election night. We are going to refresh and run through the latest results so far. Mayor McLean right now, she's got 56%. Masterson's 42.
Yeah, we've still got 20, 30 precincts out. It looks like there won't be a runoff here. It looks like, I mean, we have a little bit of, it could close a little bit, but unlikely. It looks like the mayor will win again.
In District 2, let's see, Colin Nash, 45%. It's pretty big. That's really
good. Over 3, this is just so tight. Kathy Corliss on top, 33%. Josh Johnston, very close behind. What's 945 minus 877, Nate Shellman?
I'm sorry? 945 minus 870.
Not 75
Wow.
votes.
Yep.
District 4.
Jordan Morales, 68%.
You know what? I want to come back to District 3 for a second. Earlier this evening, I said Teresa Vaughter had been is a Republican. He's no longer a Republican. Didn't identify that way in this race. Want to make sure that we made that clear. Over in 5, Meredith Stead, who we just heard from, walking away with that.
Let's look at the Eagle Mare.
The Eagle Mare's race, everybody.
Oh,
wow. Again.
What is it?
Now Jason Pierce was
With
33.9.
1%.
80 votes.
That's just barely.
80 votes. Yeah.
So we'll go around the panel here. We'll start with Nate.
Yes.
What do you think? What do you think?
I gotta tell you, I think it's almost predictable. To be honest, I think even Jason Pierce predicted a tight race. Stan Ridgway predicted a tight race. I didn't have a chance to talk with Brad Pike. He didn't want to pay for his time with toys. But that being said, I think it goes down to not just who's conservative, but the identity of the kind of conservative they are, and it's you have different jerseys there at the top.
Thoughts here in the room?
I think if Jason Pierce and Brad Pike have a runoff, and it looks like they will, Jason Pierce is going to have to work really hard. He'll be in the fight of his life because I don't believe that Stan Ridgway voters are going to vote for Jason Pierce.
No way.
It's important, though. Every time that we've refreshed on these results, they've changed. I think only 13 of the 20 precincts have come in. So, again, keep hitting F5 because I think every time we hit it, we're going to see something a little bit different.
I just did that just to see, and
I'll be wrong.
Yeah, no new votes this time. Yeah, the turnout only 32%. We've got a ways to come up.
I think that's
Crazy.
I think that's still high. That's
Yeah.
still high for Eagle. Something that I'm definitely going to want to look at once we end the broadcast is what was the turnout 4 years ago? Because I remember looking at those results and being pretty surprised at just how few people actually elected Jason Pierce in terms of that turnout. And so I'm curious to see. I would not be surprised if this turnout is higher than we saw 4 years ago because people are so engaged right now.
Were there any PAC funding efforts in the Eagle Mayor race at all?
Yes, there were. As far as big industry, Margaret, you might actually be able to shed more information on this as well. But there definitely was, grassroots PAC.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the building industry group of Treasure Valley, which is funded by home builders, it's run by Tradewinds contracting principal Steve Martinez. I'm pretty sure they were active in this race
In support of Jason.
in
right?
support of Jason, and they have, and you got to remember that PAC was started by in the 3 years ago by the general the head of Avamore, Dan Richter, to unseat Diana Laciando because of her opposition to Avamore. So, I mean, that linkage between Avamore supporting Jason Pierce and being against his opponents and being for Avamore is there. And so that PAC was in this race.
And that PAC intervened in Lisa Sanchez's race.
Yep, correct.
And to probably results that I would say helped her. Brought money in against, and I think the folks in that district at the time, the North End, went, I don't know about that.
Well, and that PAC, and if you're not familiar, that PAC has created some of those attack ads that you've seen on Facebook that dubbed former Commissioner Diana Laciando Lockdown Laciando, that were criticizing Mayor McLean, saying she was attracting homeless people and addicts to Boise and turning Boise into Portland. I mean, that's the tone.
It's a very fear-based,
And that was the PAC that Mike Masterson came out and disavowed the anti-LGBTQIA spot, which we actually never saw. It came down so fast that we couldn't find it. We tried. And so, they spent money to some, I say, uneven results. In the city council side here.
Yeah, very amazing. 24.4%.
To go back to something Margaret brought up, in 2019, Jason Pierce had 3,933 votes to get to 52%.
Voters. There's more people in my district than Eagle.
Stan Ridgway had 2,600 voters. Brad Pike, amazingly enough, had almost 3,800 voters in that Eagle City Council race in 2019.
There were 32,000 and 31,000 in total the ACHD race that I ran.
So we were just talking about the dynamics. So there are more citizens in my district in Boise than the entire city of Eagle.
Crazy.
And so Alexis was just talking about her experience and how much, 32,000?
Yeah, 32,000.
There's something to be said for the districting model, right? There's definitely pros and cons, but there's those 32,000 or so people have a person that they can call and say, hey, Lucy, hey, Patrick, hey, Luke, I got a concern. And you might be more responsive to them because they can vote against you and you're not mixed in with all these other parts of the city.
But I think the point is that, Boise has such a bigger population that these numbers, like 1 or 2 votes in this race, are going to make an outsized difference.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of these residents really know how close and how small and how limited the number of folks that actually vote in these races. Like, that's really telling. And it just shows too how much these investments, whether they're PACs or Conservation Voters for Idaho or whatever endorsements, right? They can the bang for your buck, if you're doing the right type of messaging and doing your homework, you can win these races. Brad, it's just crazy to me.
What do we think about endorsements? You've got Conservation Voters of Idaho, you've got Planned Parenthood, you've got the realtors, you have
Colonel Police,
the FOP,
firefighters,
the statesmen. You have kind of that's what talking about an array as people who've run and who've won some of those endorsements and lost some of those endorsements. What role do you think that they play? Do you think people go, Planned Parenthood said that's the person I like them, or the FOP said that's? Do you think it matters?
I think it does.
Depends on the city.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it matters in Kathy's race for sure. That Planned Parenthood endorsement, Kathy versus Teresa, that's a big one.
Well, especially now. 4 years ago, abortion was legal in all states because of the Supreme Court. That is no longer the case. And so, for people who are in Boise, someone who is backed by Planned Parenthood and is willing to back the mayor on, like the resolution that says Boise is not going to prioritize investigations into criminal investigations into abortions. For people that are pro-choice voters in Boise, really strongly pro-choice, they see that endorsement, that matters to them now.
Let's pivot to another issue here that I think is interesting, and that's McGurtigo Park. And we wrote a ton of stories on McGurtigo Park. You guys heard a lot about it. Something that had been dormant for 20 years. Nobody talked about McGurtigo Park. Nobody even knew how to say it. And it was this big thing last year. In this race, Margaret, remind me, Chris Blanchard said, let's make the park happen as a park. And the other 3
Kathy and Chris had similar positions. They said, okay, maybe we can't do the whole park, but let's do part of it. Let's figure out how to figure out what we can do a compromise. And Josh Johnson wanted to build McGurdio Park. I don't think Teresa had a strong stance on it either way. I mean, she didn't come out saying no, but I don't recall it being a big priority for her.
I'm always curious if that McGurdio Park is in the unincorporated part of the city. It's right on the edge, could easily be brought into the city through annexation. Hasn't happened yet. But, if you look at this map, right? This district goes as far as almost downtown. Like we're talking about Depot Bench, Vista Avenue. Do those voters care about McGurdio Park?
It's a very odd.
Park.
It's a very odd district.
Yeah.
I think it's got very strange dynamics because of that. And I think the McGurdio Park issue was less about that particular park and more about Boiseans wanting access wherever they live. That was the herald there. That was the call.
It does seem like there's a certain constituent who's very excited about McGurdio Park, though, right? But it's maybe not a broad.
Well, they may not be a constituent. That's the issue out there.
That's very true.
The other thing about McGurdio Park, though, that I think we lose sight of sometimes is, look, everybody wants to build the park. And the candidates you described who had more nuanced positions were, I think, probably closer to the actual issue, which is there's a lot of money that's needed to build that park that's not there. And so I haven't seen anybody running on a platform of don't build McGurdio Park. And I haven't heard anybody in City Hall say don't do it. It's a more complicated funding issue.
I mean, even, there's obviously some debate on how much it'll cost. And some of those folks are like, it's not 32 million, it's a lot less. And let's say it's 10 million. The city's like, do we spend 10 million on the South Junior High pool? There's always a decision for funds and how it goes. And anyway, we could talk about McGurdio Park all night.
But I think particularly now that every council person will be districted, those discussions are going to become a lot more intense because everybody's going to want something in their neighborhood.
And do you worry about that? You've talked about wanting a library in your district. Maybe Jimmy Halliburton doesn't care about a library in your district, but he has something. You kind of have to be like, support this, I'll support that. Do you think it?
I think that is legislative life, and I think there's, you have to look at the greater good. And I think you also have to look at where things needed. And I mean, obviously I'm a big library supporter. I want a library in West Boise, but I think that's going to be part of the council's discussion. And I do think that those things have already happened in other areas. It just hasn't been as direct as it's going to be now with districting.
Luke, what about Meridian? I mean, you've got some of these same issues where the districts are going to matter, and the Linder Road overpass, is that important to all Meridianites?
I'd like to think the Meridian Road overpass is important to all Meridian residents, CUNA residents, Boise.
And Metro, actually, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's in our name. Everybody's going to and through our community. Boise moved to districts earlier than Meridian did because of the census delay, because of COVID. So we haven't seen that play out. I think that we have tried as a city, we've known this is coming, and just the way it kind of fell is that we've got different council members living in different districts. We haven't seen that play out as much, but we were also fortunate. We opened, 2 fire stations, one in North, one in South. We've had a long-term plan for a large-scale park that we've been expanding in South Meridian. I think inevitably, to Lucy's point, it's going to be part of the process. You hope, though, that the voters elect council members that want to represent the entire city, even if they're only going to be elected from their particular district.
Do you think it further empowers the mayor because the mayor is the only person that all voters have a shot at?
I think that mayors in any city that's districts really sees this as an opportunity to galvanize the community and the council members that support their vision. I'm really interested to see how this process plays out when we look back 10, 15 years from now and see how cities have grown as a result of districts.
Yeah. Let's get through some more results. And it's already after 11. Look at the Eagle Mayor. Let's make sure we're refreshed here. Eagle Mayor. We are still the same results. Yeah. Garden City City Council. Still have 2 precincts out, but it's James.
Yeah, this has been kind of the same as well. James Page and Kent Rasmussen with the top 2.
Close, though.
It is close. It is
small.
Close.
It's going to depend. The eastern end of Garden City is very different from that western end.
Yeah.
And so depending on where those precincts are that are missing, that could change. Hannah Ball was mayoral candidate 2 years ago, more popular on the eastern end than the western end.
CUNA Mayor Joe Steer.
Yeah, big lead
for
there.
another,
Change there.
term. Out to Meridian, over to Meridian. Robert Simpson is going to be mayor for a second term. How many terms did Tammy DeVeerd serve?
Tammy served 4 terms.
4 terms. And those were the same 4 as Dave Peter, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they married each other. Very interesting.
Yeah. In the council districts, we've been watching 2 all night, and every time we pulled this up, Liz Strader's been in the lead. 2 precincts remaining. Are those now the 2 precincts that they live in?
So if you can marry somebody who's incredibly astute when it comes to election results, I would encourage you to do it. I've been getting great texts from my wife all night who's been monitoring this race.
I'd like to give her a shout out by name.
I feel like she's been, I think Adrian has been texting, I think, half the panel at different points tonight.
Cheater. You cheater.
It's coming soon. Don't worry. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Councilmember Strader's precinct has come in, but I don't think Councilmember Hoagland's has as of yet. Well, it's close. I do think that the margin is going to be really, really challenging. That number of votes with 2 precincts, again, to come in, he would have to come in very, very, very strong.
Yeah. Over in District 3 here, Doug Taylor.
Yep.
Running away with it.
Yep.
No doubt.
And Little Roberts, 62.
With 9 out of 10 precincts, I mean, I think that we can call this race for Anne. She's got this squarely in her favor, and really looking forward to having Anne back on the council in January.
When are you all gonna annex all the holes? I don't get that. Boise's all together, and Meridian's got all these holes.
Well, and not to besmirch my good neighbors from the east, but Meridian favors more annexation by choice. Past administrations have done large swaths of forced annexation. That's just not in our community's DNA.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I've always actually wondered that, so I appreciate the answer.
There was some reaction on today's program, Don. You'd be interested to know from some people who were north of Victory, and maybe I might have that, who were upset that they didn't get to vote on the south of Victory, who were not happy that they didn't get to vote on the mayor's races or any of the city council races.
Clancy Anderson, who is an ACHD watcher, among other things.
Oh, yeah.
We'll take his word for it. We haven't verified this, but he says that Masterson has conceded the race. So we'll verify that, of course. We're going to wrap up with the Ada County jail bonds. And
wow. I think Nate is probably going to be right.
It's
good. What? I'm sorry.
He's going to go and download this, and he's going to use that on his show.
Nate may be right.
It's going to either pass or fail by a number that is
Painful.
bigger or smaller than the number of vacant beds in the jail right now. It's going to be that close.
That is.
There's a headline.
Okay, let's go through final thoughts. Alexis, we'll start with you.
Oh man, why did it start with me, Don? Well, I think it's really clear that the Boise voters are very in support of the Boise zoning code rewrite, these investments in housing. Loving the referendum on supporting libraries and the Meridian council races. I also want to loop back to your original question that I was a part of. It was around door knocking. And I think, again, the candidates that did the door knocking and had that more voter contact, clearly that was a winning strategy for a lot of them.
Patrick?
Yeah, I agree with Alexis, particularly on the zoning code. It's the public testimony in favor of that came out 2-1, and I certainly wouldn't say 2-1 in favor, and I wouldn't say that any candidate changed their views in order to align with that. But the reality is, if you were generally supportive of the zoning code rewrite as a candidate, you tended to fall along the lines of the public testimony that we received. And it was a lot of testimony. So I'm not saying that was a smart campaign strategy, but the candidates who emerged successfully in Boise tended to support the zoning code rewrite, which is also what the public tended to do when we went through that process.
Great. Lucy, congratulations on your win tonight.
Congratulations, Lucy. Yeah.
I just would like to thank the candidates. It is so hard to run. All of us have done that. It is grueling. You take time away from your family. You take time away from your job. And there's great doors and there's not so great doors, and there's great city council meetings and there's not so great city council meetings. And our democracy doesn't work unless we have people who step up and say, let me serve. And anybody who puts their name on the ballot takes courage. And we talk a lot about, politicians this, but 90% of people that are on the ballot just want to serve. Mm-hmm. And let's reward that with our thanks that they're trying to do it.
Mm-hmm. For me, I think there's two takeaways. One I'll take first from Meridian, which is it looks like all the candidates in Meridian were endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police and our fire union, and that's a big deal. It shows again a strong connection to our community. The second takeaway, I think, from a regional perspective, and it's something I think that Alexis and I know all too well, which is that every vote matters. Mm-hmm. There's going to be people at the county tomorrow that are going to be Monday morning quarterbacking their decisions. Lots of campaign breakdown in Eagle, I'm sure, tonight and tomorrow, because there's going to be a lot of woulda, coulda, shouldas about how to earn those few extra votes.
Margaret?
I mean, if Kathy Corliss wins this race, she was not endorsed by McLean, but she was on a mailer with her. That's a clean sweep for McLean in Boise and her affiliated candidates. That race is still close, but gosh, Nash likely winning, and then Meredith running away with it. Kathy even getting that much, even if she doesn't win. To me, this is a strong mandate that, yes, there are people who are upset with the direction of the city. We don't want to discount those Masterson voters, but this is a strong mandate to Boise wants to continue in the direction that it's going. And I think that we're going to see that continue in the next couple years of, okay, like, the voters spoke, and the voters are given generally a thumbs up.
Let's look at one more shot at the jail bond. It is not going to pass.
Nope.
I don't think that's going to happen. We've got 7 precincts left, and it is failing. Nate, what are your final thoughts?
65.9. I have a number of thoughts, so I don't know how long you want to go, Don. So just feel to cut my mic anytime you wish. I was amazed by the.
Oh man!
Sorry, I did it on purpose. I'm sorry. I cut your mic. You couldn't tell. Go ahead.
But I was amazed about the lack of marketing by the Masterson campaign when you had some powerhouses in his corner, and I didn't feel like I heard from a number of them. I didn't feel like I heard from
came out on Friday.
Marianne Jordan, from Dave Beater, from Cherie Buckner Webb. I think there was a great opportunity for him to not just come off as just a cop or just a police officer, but come off as something more. I would also go forward to say that Lauren was loaded for bear, man. She was well funded. She had people looking out for her. She started her messaging, I want to say, about a month earlier than Mike did, as far as social media, as far as the streaming commercials and all of that. So for this result to come out the way it is, not a huge surprise. What I'm fascinated by, and I'll give Luke some grace and just let him just smile. Watching the Meridian and Eagle races, how I kind of dissect the flavors of the winners and challengers. In both of those communities, and what's going to define, because inside baseball there's been a lot of infighting and seat changes as far as the county Republican Party is concerned. So in narrowing down these little hamlets, these little precincts, that's where these fights are so prolific, and to see where the actual Boise line is, where the party almost line of demarcation is, you can see the cut. You can see the cut directly. What's interesting to hear from you guys that I learned tonight was the fracture isn't just on one side. There's another fracture on the I guess you would say Democrat or liberal side as well, as to who's supporting who. And I think it'll be interesting to find going forward what that means for Boise politics going forward. Like, what are we going to see more policies? What's going to be in the future? You guys mentioned everything today except bike lanes, and I've talked about that just a couple times.
Well, Nate, we should chat another time about that then.
It sounds like a
I can't wait. And now I find out that Patrick Bajan from a couple people today will now answer my calls. We'll be.
Oh yeah. I was waiting to bring that up.
It'll be fantastic. But you know what? What's neat to see from tonight is what the possible arguments are going forward. Already tonight, we already had ranked choice voting get brought up by somebody else here. So just knowing the arguments that are to come, guys. John. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this, even though I couldn't make it to the building.
Yeah.
So
you know what? My final thoughts are just that I appreciate all of you being here, Secretary McGrane as well. Margaret and I talked about how do we do this? How do we book? And then we just started asking everybody, and everybody we asked came. And so thank you all. You brought a great perspective, really across the municipal spectrum, I would say. And so we appreciate that. Question, I'll let you wrap.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone as well. Also, wanted to remind everyone we will have a recap of preliminary results in our newsletter, Idaho First, tomorrow. Also, we're going to write some stories tonight, the BoiseDev team, about those results as well. So we'll have all that in our newsletter tomorrow morning.
Thanks for representing sponsor Regents Blue Shield of Idaho. Adrian, please tell your friends that we've been plugging them tonight. And also thanks to Jeff Heath and Freeform for letting us tear apart his showroom. We'll try and put it back the way it looked earlier this evening. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.
Hi, I'm Hank Patterson, here on behalf of Lithia Ford of Boise. Right now is Lithia's all-wheel drive event, because no matter where you drive, the freeway or the backcountry, no matter the conditions, snow, sleet, rain, mud, wet, dirt, you're going to want to drive on all your wheels, not just some of them. Tell you what, I drove to Laramie one time on 3 wheels, sparks flying everywhere, dog barking. God, boy, I could have used all my wheels on that trip.
Mark, I've been looking at your labs. They look great. What have you been doing?
When you're the leader in disaster cleanup and restoration, how do you make like it never even happened happen? Fire it up, Randy! By being prepared for anything! Whatever comes your way, there's a pro for that.
Serve Pro, like it never even happened.